My childhood friend found a stray princess dressed in Chanel, a delicate porcelain doll born with a congenital heart condition. In my past life, I gave everything to care for her, yet she used a diary to paint me as the villainess who tormented her. After her death, my childhood friend skyrocketed to fame online with that posthumous work, and only then did I discover she was the heiress to Jianjing's wealthiest family. Cyberbullying. Blacklisting. Just as the Qin family drove me to the brink. A man descended like a god. At 9 months pregnant, he bound my hands and feet himself, saying, "You killed Luo Luo. 1,000 cuts wouldn't be enough to atone for your sin." In that moment, I finally understood. He was the executioner the Qin family had meticulously planted. The three of them sat on the luxurious sofa of the yacht, watching me struggle on the deck. Amniotic fluid and blood pooled around me as the baby suffocated inside my womb. Only when I was on the brink of death did they tie me to a heavy rock and sink me to the bottom of the river. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day I first met Qin Luo Luo. Right now, I'd been reborn. In just 10 minutes, Xiaoran will show up with Qin Luo Luo, acting like he's doing me a favor by having me play the role of her personal maid. At that thought, I quickly dragged out a worn-out wooden box from under the bed, opened the lid, and revealed a mooncake tin. Inside was my entire life savings, exactly 20,000 yuan. In my previous life, I had hidden it so well, but somehow she found out about it. Later, she found a sick Scottish fold. The vet said it was a genetic condition, incurable, and that if she truly loved the cat, she should euthanize it to end its suffering. But Qin Luo Luo insisted that the Scottish fold was just as pitiful as she was, and refused to give up on it, insisting it must be treated. She had no money, so she had to turn to me and Xiaoran for help. Xiaoran was always broke. He never even had $100 to his name, but this time, he somehow came up with 20,000 to pay for the Scottish fold surgery, but the Scottish fold still ended up dying a week later. That night, it was pouring rain, just like the night Yiping went to her father for money. Qin Luo Luo, who was already in poor health, disappeared with the Scottish fold's body, and no one knew where she went. Xiaoran and I searched for hours until we finally found her unconscious on a street in the upscale neighborhood. After taking her to the hospital, I went home to get money, only to discover my hard-earned college savings had vanished. That's when I realized the money for the Scottish fold surgery came from my own savings. But it wasn't Qin Luo Luo who took the money. She just told Xiaoran that he was the one who took it. We had a huge blowout argument. We're through for good. Qin Luo Luo moved into Xiaoran's home. She already had a heart condition, and the Scottish fold incident sent her into depression. She wouldn't even leave the house, relying entirely on Xiaoran's care. Xiaoran truly loved her. To provide her with a better life, he started bettering himself, delivering food, live streaming, trying every possible way to make ends meet. Yet Qin Luo Luo still succumbed to her battle with depression. From that moment on, Xiaoran became a completely different person. It was the dawn of the influencer economy, and riding that wave with his striking looks, he rose to fame as an online celebrity. When his following hit the 10 million mark, he posted Qin Luo Luo's diary online. Viral sensation. Qin Luo Luo's kindness and purity, along with Xiaoran's unwavering devotion, moved the entire internet to tears. Meanwhile, I, the vicious supporting character in the diary, was cyberbullied beyond recognition. They not only attacked me online but also doxed me in real life. After discovering I was a rapist's daughter, someone disguised as a homeless man broke into my home late at night. I fought back desperately and barely managed to drive him away. Only then did I realize everything I went through was part of a livestream challenge. It was initiated by Xiaoran. His sole intention was to destroy me. After tormenting me for 5 years, he joined forces with Qin Lingzhao and my own lover to kill me. Now that I've been reborn, I'll make sure every last one of them pays in blood for what they owe. I took the money and an old newspaper I kept tucked away at the bottom of a chest, carefully sealed them in a plastic bag, packed 2 changes of clothes into my canvas bag, locked the door, and was about to head downstairs when I spotted Xiaoran and Qin Luo Luo already at the building entrance. This dilapidated old building only has one staircase. If I went down now, I'd run right into them. I quickly ducked back up the stairs and hid in the stairwell. Just like in her past life, Qin Luo Luo at 16 was elegant and pure, like a lily bud about to bloom. Xiaoran's father is unknown, and his mother went missing many years ago. We grew up together. To put it in a cliched way, we were childhood sweethearts and each other's only friend, until we met Qin Luo Luo. He prostrated himself at the princess's feet, as if he too had become noble. Of course, he certainly didn't make the wrong choice. In his past life, he rode the wave of Qin Luo Luo's influence, boarded the Qin family's powerful ship, soared straight to the clouds, and achieved a leap in social class. He may be poor now, but he's genuinely handsome, tall and lean, agile and nimble, leading the way," he said softly. "Fu Liangjing's father is a rapist, but don't be scared, he's in prison. It's just Fu Liangjing living alone at home. She listens to me more than anyone, so she'll definitely take good care of you. In a bit, I'll have her give up her bed for you and sleep on the floor," Qin Luoluo said in a delicate, fragile voice. "Is that really okay? Does her family only have one bed?" Xiaoran curled her lip. "She's dirt poor. Just one room, one bed, and even that was scavenged. I actually lived on the second floor." But it still felt like a burden for Qin Luoluo. She walked very slowly, and Xiaoran patiently matched her pace. It took a good 3 or 4 minutes before we finally reached my doorstep. But we were met with an iron guardian. Yes, even in 2015, our home was still secured with an iron chain and padlock. He was dumbfounded. That Fu Liangjing, can't he just stay home during summer break? And here he is bragging about wanting to get into college. What a joke. Yes, I was desperate to change my fate by getting into college. I worked tirelessly to earn and save money, only to have it all stolen. Later, I pushed myself to deliver takeout for 2 months straight just to afford tuition. I finally graduated and landed a job I loved, but then the storm hit. Qin Lingqiao blacklisted me. The poor claw their way out of hell through sheer force of will, only for the rich to effortlessly shove them back to square one, or into an even deeper abyss. But they never understood why hell stood empty. The midday heat in July soared to 40 degrees Celsius. Even a healthy person couldn't last long outdoors, let alone Qin Luoluo. Watching her face grow increasingly pale, Xiaoran had no choice but to bring her back to his place. Xiaoran's home was a single-room unit on the ground floor, a daily rental property that happened to face the neighborhood trash bins, perpetually enveloped in foul odors. He could only hope Qin Luoluo would manage to adjust to these conditions. The moment they left, I slung my backpack over my shoulder and headed downstairs. Passing by the alley near Xiaoran's place, I hid in the shadows and watched coldly as he half-guided, half-dragged Qin Luoluo into that damp, gloomy alley. Inside his short-term rental, 8 shirtless men were sprawled haphazardly across metal bunk beds. The stench of sweat, foul feet, and cheap cigarettes hung in the air, so repulsive that even the stray dogs loitering nearby wouldn't come close. This place. Qin Luoluo's pupils contracted violently, her slender fingers clutching desperately at her Chanel skirt. The bald man nearest the door grinned, revealing a set of yellowed teeth. "Hey, brother Xia, bringing your girl back. Fuck off." Xiaoran kicked over the water bucket. "Everyone, put your damn clothes on." But it was already too late. Qin Luoluo's scream sliced through the sweltering afternoon air. She saw a man covered in back tattoos brazenly changing his underwear on the bed by the window. "Stop pretending," the tattooed man sneered. "Oh, wearing Chanel, are we? Look at this rich girl." Xiaoran grabbed a stool and hurled it at him. A chaotic brawl erupted among the crowd. In the commotion, Qin Luoluo stumbled backward toward the rear exit, tripped over the doorstep, and watched her limited edition clutch purse tumble into the foul gutter. As she reached to retrieve it, she knocked over a stack of beer bottles against the wall. Shards flew up and gashed her calf, bringing tears of pain to her eyes. The tower of bottles cascaded down, some rolling into the ditch while others skittered back inside. Some of these bottles still had beer residue inside, which fermented in the heat and became no different from stink bombs. The stench overwhelmed everyone in the room, sending them fleeing out the front door. Qin Luoluo covered her ears and huddled against the wall, screaming uncontrollably. Xiaoran wanted to rescue her, but the beer bottles blocked his path. "Luoluo, don't be afraid, they're just a few bottles." I picked up a broken clothes pole from the ground and shooed the rat near the garbage away. "Ah!" Qin Luoluo let out another scream before collapsing into Qiniran's arms. He suddenly turned into a roaring madman, yelling, "Call an ambulance." I could almost picture a scene straight out of a cheesy palace drama, with the emperor clutching his favorite consort and yelling, "Fetch the royal physician," yet no one paid him any mind. Frantically, he carried Qin Luoluo into the room by himself, laid her on some random tattered mat on the floor, and proceeded with a chaotic mix of mouth-to-mouth and chest compressions, practically groping her all over in the process. Only then did it finally occur to him to call emergency services. I crept along the wall, quietly moved the beer bottle aside, picked up Qin Luoluo's handbag, and didn't look inside until I'd rushed to a secluded spot. A stack of cash, about 20,000 yuan, 2 gold necklaces, and a Cartier diamond bracelet glittering in the sunlight, so this damsel in distress who'd been leeching off me in my past life was actually carrying over 300,000 worth of valuables. No wonder she could afford to act so refined and composed. Making my financial struggles seem downright vulgar in comparison, I snapped the SIM card and flung it into a filthy drain, then smashed the phone to pieces. Tucked inside the bag's inner compartment was a gold bank card. I left it untouched and tossed both back into the murky water beneath the beer bottles. For good measure, I stomped on the bag a couple times. No one would be reselling that. I wanted to see if this little Miss High and Mighty could keep up her prim and proper act without a cent to her name. My first stop was a phone shop, where I picked up a used phone for $500 and got a new SIM card. Then I headed straight to the bank and deposited all my cash. Standing at the entrance of the plastic surgery clinic, I instinctively reached up and touched my face. I'm actually quite good looking, but I prefer to keep a low profile. That's why I always wear heavy bangs and large black-framed glasses that cover most of my face. Honestly, if I were to sweep my bangs aside and tie up my hair, no one would recognize me. But in the end, this very appearance brought me trouble. It was summer vacation, and a student discount banner hung at the hospital entrance stood out strikingly under the blazing sun. "Your eyes are quite unique." The doctor adjusted his glasses. "They're classic phoenix eyes. Very distinctive with an Eastern charm. Are you sure you want to change them to double eyelids?" "Confirmed." The surgery originally cost $12,000, but with the student discount it was only $6,000, paid in cash by Chin Luoluo. I lied and said I was from out of town, worried about post-operative infection, and requested to stay in the hospital until the stitches were removed. The hospital agreed, charging only an additional 300 yuan for accommodation. The surgery went smoothly. On the day the stitches came out, my eyes were still swollen. The face in the mirror felt both foreign and familiar. My most distinctive feature, the almond-shaped eyes, were gone. In their place were delicate double eyelids, which had also erased my most striking characteristic. I still let my bangs fall over my forehead and put on those clunky oversized sunglasses, looking as plain and unremarkable as ever. On the bus ride home, I pulled that crumpled newspaper out of my bag. Tucked away in a corner of the local news section was an inconspicuous article recounting an event from 10 years ago. A sudden fire had broken out in a shopping mall's children's play area. Fortunately, it happened before business hours, so there were no casualties. Flipping to the front page, the day's headline stood out starkly. The eldest son of the Chin family, the richest man, and his wife had died in a car accident, leaving behind their 2 children. Humph. I let out a cold laugh and searched for the Chin Corporation on my phone. The current patriarch, now 76 years old, remains remarkably sharp and energetic. He has 4 sons. The eldest, born to his first wife, was the husband in the couple that died in the car accident. The other 3 were born to his mistresses, each having started their own branches of the family. Little known to the public, the Chin family actually had 3 daughters. In daily life, they only received some pocket money and couldn't even get close to touching any shares. In the Chin family, daughters were considered utterly worthless. Chin Luolua's running away from home was even more of a joke, because Chin Lingchao's entry into the company was blocked and required a marriage alliance. This sickly girl self-importantly thought she had become a burden to her brother and chose to leave. Is this the logic of a normal person? No. She's a deranged woman who revels in self-torment and craves to be everyone's eternal white moonlight. And in our past life, she succeeded. She destroyed my life with just a few diary entries. This time, killing her will be as easy as turning my hand. Killing her and Xiaoran would be easy, but Chin Lingchao is a different story. He's destined to become the richest man in the future. And there's also my vicious ex-boyfriend. I never discovered his true identity, not even when I died. If I want to kill him, I'll have to start with Chin Lingchao. So Chin Luoluo still has her uses. After getting out of the car, I didn't head straight home. The July sun scorched the asphalt, with heat waves distorting the distant street view. Wiping the sweat from my forehead, I headed to the second-hand market and bought a 90s-era box-style air conditioner and a small refrigerator. For just 1,200 yuan, it could significantly improve my quality of life. Passing by the alley where Xiaoran lived, I spotted him and Chin Luoluo from afar, sitting under the phoenix tree at the alley's entrance, enjoying the cool shade. I signaled the installer to take a detour. Every floor of this staff dormitory built in the 1980s was permeated with the smell of stale cooking oil and damp mildew. My home was just a single room of about 30 square meters. You entered into a tiny kitchen, then a bathroom barely large enough to turn around in, and finally the bedroom at the far end. The wooden window frames had long since warped, letting in drafts in the winter and trapping heat in the summer. Now, This old air conditioner could finally provide a bit of cool relief. My eyes stung as I wiped the scratched floor tiles. Only those who have experienced homelessness truly understand the preciousness of having a place to call their own. After discarding years of accumulated clutter, the room suddenly felt much more spacious. Just as I finished tidying up, familiar footsteps sounded outside the door. That buoyant, skipping rhythm could only belong to Xiaoran. As expected, the moment he saw me, his handsome face lit up with excitement. Fu Lianjing, where have you been these past few days? Do you have any idea how many times I've looked for you? While saying this, he tried to squeeze through the door. I blocked him with the broom. What are you doing? I just finished cleaning, and you're all sweaty. Stay away from me. He still tried to push his way in. A surge of hatred welled up inside me. I gripped the broom handle and struck him hard across the face. Ah, are you fucking crazy? You're the one who's fucking crazy. This is my house. You can't just barge in like that, you piece of shit. I picked up the kitchen knife from the counter, my gaze fierce and menacing. He backed away, letting out a disbelieving shriek. Fu Lianjing, have you lost your damn mind, pulling a knife on me? I brandished the blade. We're not that close. Watch your mouth and keep your hands to yourself. Who's touching you, with that foul temper of yours? I don't even want to deal with you. Then get lost, I snapped, already moving to slam the door. He grinned cheekily and pressed his hand against the door again. Fu Lianjing, I really need your help with something. No, I swung my blade down. He had no choice but to let go. Bam, the door slammed shut with a vengeance. No matter how much he yells outside, I won't open the door. I turned on the air conditioner, enjoying the cool breeze while reading quietly. To get revenge on Qin Lingchao. I need to become stronger. Getting into a top university is the first step. When my eyes grew tired, I took a watermelon from the fridge, cut it in half, and ate it with a spoon. Outside the window, Xiaoran's angry shouts gradually faded into the distance. This time I didn't let him have his way. He can no longer dump the burden of taking care of Qin Luoluo on me. I heard he had to take a job at a barbecue stall, earning just 2,000 a month. Honestly, with some frugality, that should be enough to cover expenses for 2 people. But his place has been used for short-term rentals for years, so every day there are people knocking on the door asking about it, or just causing trouble on purpose. In this chaotic slum, even a native like me, a second-generation inmate, has to hide my face and keep a low profile. How could a pristine white swan possibly survive here? Qin Luoluo was startled awake several times by intruders breaking into her room at night, landing her in the hospital more than once. The money Xiaoran earned wasn't even enough to cover the ambulance fees. Qin Luoluo's heart condition wasn't initially serious. With regular medication, she could live almost normally. But if things continued like this, who knows how she'd end up. That day, as I went downstairs to buy breakfast, I literally ran into Xiaoran. Fu Lianjing, he grabbed my arm, his peach blossom eyes brimming with hurt. What have I done to upset you? You've been avoiding me lately. I'm truly in a bind. Please help me. For the sake of all our years growing up together. Xiaoran was blessed with striking good looks, rosy lips, fair complexion, and eyes that curved into crescents when he smiled. A master of charming his way into people's hearts. He had all the grandmothers and aunties in the building wrapped around his finger, each vying to spoil him with homemade treats. I used to consider him a friend too, always looking out for him. Little did I know my genuine care would nurture such an ungrateful wretch. Speak, I said coldly, pulling my arm back. He immediately put on a smile and took half a step closer. I have a female friend who needs a place to stay. Could she crash at your place for a while? No, I cut him off before he could finish. Why would your girlfriend stay with me instead of at your place? She's not my girlfriend yet. His ears turned red, and his eyes darted away, looking every bit like a lovesick teenager. So you have a crush on her, I scoffed. Ever heard of keeping your rivals close, and you're pushing her away? With that, I tried to step around him. Wait, don't go. He frantically grabbed the hem of my shirt. I'm on night shift, and it's not safe for her to be home alone. How about this? She stays at your place during the day, and I'll pick her up after work. Deal? You don't get off until 2 a.m. Are you trying to wake me up and drive me crazy? I shook off his hand. No way. Xiaoran's expression instantly darkened. Fu Lianjing, what's wrong with helping out a friend? Let's just end this friendship then. I walked into the breakfast shop without looking back. Boss. 1 bowl of hot dry noodles, and a mung bean soup. Only then did he notice the sunglasses on my face, asking in surprise, what happened to your eyes? A sty. I lowered my head and stirred the mung bean soup. Get me a bowl too. He shamelessly moved closer. Without looking up, I said, grab a bowl and kneel by the door. you might just get some handouts. He slammed the table in anger, turned to the vendor, and shouted, give me the same thing. Then he threw down 10 yuan fiercely, adding, as if I'd want to freeload off you. I picked up my bowl and moved to a corner seat. Xiaoran followed me over and asked, what will it take for you to help me? Ever since Qin Luoluo collapsed on the street and an ambulance had to be called, the whole neighborhood found out that Xiaoran had taken in a delicate beauty. Now the neighbors give his place a wide berth, afraid of getting tangled in any trouble. I've got a terrible temper. Wouldn't want to accidentally scare your little fairy into a fit, I said, wiping my mouth unhurriedly. Who are you hexing? His face darkened instantly. Of course, you can curse him 1,000 times and he wouldn't care, but he won't tolerate a single word against Qin Luoluo. Does love make people pathetic? Alright then. I pointed at the high-rise across the street. Go jump off that building. If you survive the fall, I'll help you. Xiaoran slammed his chopsticks down and stormed out. All bark and no bite, but who's been indulging him? Besides, I doubt he'd actually cut ties with me. He could never handle taking care of Qin Luoluo all by himself. Sure enough, he showed up again the next afternoon with Qin Luoluo in tow. This was my first time seeing her in this lifetime. Compared to how I remembered her from the same period, she looked utterly haggard. Her gaunt frame so fragile it seemed a gust of wind could scatter her. I stood blocking the doorway with a cold expression. What do you want? Xiaoran wiped the sweat from his brow. It's too hot to stay at home, but the subway station is too far for Luoluo to walk. Can we stay at your place until evening? No, I refused flatly. We'll pay, he quickly added, remembering the grudges from my past life that I still needed their help to settle. I paused briefly. Fine, 40 an hour. Are you robbing me? His eyes widened in disbelief. The hotel up front charges 30 per hour, I sneered. Go ahead, then. Qin Luoluo is a neat freak. The smell of smoke in those cheap motels would be the death of her. Qin Iran's place is no good either. Over the years, the stench from those men has seeped into the house, and she can't stand staying there for long. Sure enough, as soon as the words were spoken, she covered her mouth, her eyes welling up with tears. Xiaoran panicked instantly, gritted his teeth, pulled out a 100 yuan bill, and slapped it into my hand. I glanced at the time. It's noon now. In 2.5 hours, it'll be the hottest part of the day. Are you sure you'll leave on time? Let's agree on a deadline now. Otherwise, I gave them a meaningful look. I won't hesitate to kick you out. What do you take us for? He said with a dark expression. If you can't afford it, don't try to chase after girls. I sneered. Qin Luoluo turned pale, while Xiaoran's face was a picture of mixed emotions. Finally, he pulled out another banknote and ground out through clenched teeth. I'll leave at 5. Only then did I step aside to let them in. A cool breeze washed over us. Though old, the room was impeccably tidy. I even bought cement myself to replace the old walls with new ones, laid gleaming white tiles that you could almost see your reflection in, kept the floors spotless, covered the old wooden table with a floral tablecloth, and even draped the chairs with plain fabric covers. Fu Liangjing. Xiaoran couldn't hide her surprise. You've really learned how to live well. A white gauze curtain now hangs between the bedroom and living room, which were originally connected. The bed is covered with a mosquito net, a beanbag chair sits in the corner, and a bamboo mat is spread on the floor. At the foot of the bed stood a newly acquired second-hand desk, its shelves crammed with books, test prep materials alongside old volumes bought by weight. I drew the sheer curtains tight. Stay in the living area, sofa and floor mat only. No entering the bedroom. Qin Luoluo sank into the sofa cushions, her tense frame finally going slack. Suddenly her gaze locked onto the journal lying on the coffee table, a flicker of yearning lighting her eyes. Xiaoran immediately leaned in. You like this notebook? Seeing her nod, he turned to me. Fu Liangjing, let's give this notebook to Luoluo. Are you a beggar, grabbing at everything you see? I sneered. 200. Take it or leave it. Are you insane? This piece of junk is worth 200. This is a limited edition cultural journal. Of course someone like you who doesn't go to school wouldn't get it. Ask Luoluo if you don't believe me. I was totally bluffing, just a regular notebook I grabbed at the stationery store. But the cover has this artsy vibe that's totally Qin Luoluo style. Sure enough, she nodded while carefully cradling the notebook, her fondness for it written all over her face, even though Xiaoran was broke. He'd genuinely give her the world if he could. He gritted his teeth and handed me another 200 yuan right then and there. I picked up a pen and handed it to Qin Luoluo. For you, it's a pleasure to meet you. Qin Luoluo gave a sweet, gentle smile. Thank you, Liangjing. I sneered inwardly while keeping a pleasant smile on my face. I drew the sheer curtains and settled in to read. Qin Luoluo's gaze fell upon the laptop on my desk once again. Xia Ran immediately caught on. Fu Liangjing. Your laptop can connect to the internet, right? Mind if we borrow it for a bit, Xia Ran, I said without looking up. Either shut up or get lost. With that kind of begging talent, why don't you go set up a bowl on the overpass? He was about to argue further, but Qin Luoluo gently tugged at his sleeve and shook her head. Peace and quiet at last. That's just how Qin Luoluo is. Treat her kindly and she'll push her luck. Snap at her and she'll behave. Some people just love being difficult. Xia Ran soon started snoring on the bamboo mat. Qin Luoluo held her newly acquired diary, writing with intense focus. At exactly 5 in the afternoon, I shooed everyone out right on the dot. Outside, the sun remained scorching, with waves of blistering heat. Xia Ran grimaced the moment he stepped out, while Qin Luoluo didn't even dare cross the threshold. Her doe-like eyes, glistening with tears, were full of pleading. Anyone met with such a gaze would surely soften, everyone but me. I just wanted to gouge out those eyeballs and stomp on them like popping firecrackers. Hurry up, you're letting all the cold air out. I pressed against the door and urged. She finally shuffled out the door. Bang! I slammed the door shut with all my might. The relentless heat wave over the past few days had turned them into regular visitors. At first, I greeted them with a frosty demeanor, but eventually started occasionally offering them cool boiled water, and even cut up watermelon for them a couple of times. They acted as grateful as if I'd bestowed some monumental favor upon them. In my past life, I genuinely cared for Qin Luoluo. I remembered the doctor saying she had a congenital heart condition and should avoid anything cold, so I cooked for her every day, simple meals, but healthy ones, yet she complained they weren't fancy or nutritious enough, claiming I was mistreating her. Now, I deliberately only cook for myself in the morning and evening. For lunch, it's either spicy hot pot or chilled noodles, with the fridge stocked full of ice cream and cold drinks. Xia Ran and I can handle anything we eat. But she can only bite her lip and watch helplessly. That delicate flower has always been like this, never saying what she wants outright, just waiting for someone to hand it to her on a silver platter. This time, I turned a blind eye, and Xia Ran was just as careless. She had no choice but to follow our lead and swallow those forbidden foods. On the first night of the dog days, the ambulance's siren tore through the night sky. Leaning on the balcony, I watched the flashing blue lights fade into the distance, struck by a sudden thought. Perhaps she wouldn't even make it to the date she died in her previous life. The next morning, the door was being pounded with thunderous force. Who the hell is dying? Get lost, I yelled through the door, jolted awake by the noise. After more than half a month of this training, Xia Ran had long shed the arrogance from his past life. His voice trembled. Fu Liangjing, Luoluo's in the hospital. The doctor says it's critical and she needs surgery immediately. We have to come up with the money. Then go ahead, why come to me? Xia Ran threw himself at my doorstep, weeping with genuine sorrow. After a moment's thought, I decided to go to the hospital with him. It wasn't out of pity. I just wanted to encourage Qin Luoluo to tough it out, in case she learned about her condition and actually went back to the Qin family. In the hospital room, Qin Luoluo remained unconscious. An oxygen mask secured over her pale face. Each faint breath formed a mist on the transparent mask, only to vanish moments later. The doctor held the medical chart and explained the situation in a grave tone. All 3 of us are orphans, I said calmly. My father is still in prison, and we don't have the money for surgery. The doctor fell silent for a moment, then could only sigh. Well, just take good care of yourself. Then, the doctor prescribed us affordable heart medication. Stepping out of the office, Xia Ran clenched his fists, his eyes reddening. I grabbed his arm and whispered, when Luoluo wakes up, don't tell her the truth. Why? He glared at me. Are you stupid? I sneered. With her heart condition, if she knew how serious it was and lived in constant fear, how could she possibly recover? This is what we call a white lie. She must never find out the truth. That's the only way this reckless charade can continue. Xia Ran hesitated for a moment, then finally nodded. So when Qin Luoluo woke up, we casually mentioned that the doctor said you need plenty of rest, and then took her home. Xia Ran truly loved her. From then on, he meticulously prepared all her meals with his own hands, strictly following the doctor's dietary instructions, just as I had done in my previous life. I thought I'd finally have a few days of peace, but then he showed up again. What now? I blocked the doorway and asked impatiently. His eyes lit up, his tone excited. Fu Liangjing, I've decided, I'm going to save up for Luoluo's treatment. I just found a new job. Come with me, I scoffed. If you love working so much, go take on more jobs. I'm still a student. Studying comes first. You've got no fucking loyalty, he snapped. I looked him up and down, then suddenly laughed. I'm not close with her, so loyalty doesn't even come into it. With looks like yours, why not sell your ass at a bar? The money's faster. Xiaoran's biggest sore spot was that his mother was a streetwalker. The moment I finished speaking, his face twisted, and he raised his hand to strike me, but I was ready. I grabbed the iron rod by the door and swung it hard at him. Humph, so I can't kill him, but that doesn't mean I can't beat him up. Smack, smack. 2 sharp blows sent him stumbling backward, blood trickling down his forehead. He covered his face. Blood seeping through his fingers, shot me one last furious glare. Then turned and walked away. I thought he would never come back, but the next day, he shamelessly showed up again with Qin Luoluo to mooch off the air conditioning, wearing an obsequious smile. Well, reality sure has a way of humbling people, and so we maintained this lukewarm coexistence. Under Xiaoran's care, Qin Luoluo's complexion improved. She even landed a cashier job at the local pharmacy while casually studying medicine on the side. She also adopted that Scottish fold from her past life. It fell ill again, and this time the condition was untreatable, but now she was penniless, with no fool like me to foot the bills, and Xiaoran's money had all gone toward the air conditioning, so she stopped trying to prolong its life, simply staying quietly by its side until it drew its last breath. After the cat passed away, we decided to bury it by the riverside. I carried the shovel, Xiaoran held the cardboard box containing the cat, and Qin Luoluo followed behind with red-rimmed eyes. After digging the grave, we placed the kitten inside along with its favorite snacks and toys from its lifetime, then covered it with yellow soil. We stood on the riverbank and silently bid our final farewells. The setting sun sank low, casting a shimmering golden glow across the river surface. The cargo ship glided slowly past, its horn letting out a long, mournful sound like a wordless lament. I spent the entire summer break grinding through all the first-year high school material from start to finish. In the first monthly exam after school started, I shot straight into the top 10 of my grade. Combining the financial aid and scholarship money covered my tuition and miscellaneous fees exactly. For living expenses, my homeroom teacher hooked me up with a tutoring gig, coaching an elementary student for an hour daily at $50 a pop. Truth is, I could have taken on more lucrative work, but I turned it down. I can't afford to have spare cash. If Qin Lingqiao found out I had the means but refused to help Qin Luoluo, that'd be another serious offense. Time slips through your fingers like sand, and before you know it, we were in our final year of high school. The day before the college entrance exams happened to be Qin Luoluo's 18th birthday. Xiaoran showed up mysteriously, saying he wanted to throw her a special birthday party and invited me along. I knew he was planning to confess his feelings. Counting the days, I chuckled. It really was a perfect day, so I nodded in agreement. The weather was lovely that day, the sunlight was gentle, and the breeze carried the sweet fragrance of gardenias. Xiaoran had booked a private karaoke room and went all out decorating it like a banquet hall, with streamers, balloons, flowers, and photos, so tacky it was laughable. He invited over a dozen friends, and every one of them was beaming with excitement. After all, who wouldn't want to witness this romantic confession firsthand? As the cake was wheeled in, everyone broke into a chorus of happy birthday. Qin Luoluo stood in the candlelight, a wistful smile on her face. I knew exactly what was going through her mind. As the heiress of the Qin family, she should have celebrated her coming of age at a 7-star hotel, a private villa, or even a castle in Paris. But now, she found herself standing under the neon lights of a cheap KTV, staring at the melting candle wax on a cream cake and the overly eager face of Xiaoran. Compared to Qin Lingqiao, the difference was like that between a prince and a stable hand. Her eyes reddened, and a tear fell onto the rose petals. "Thank you, everyone," she whispered, lowering her head to blow out the candles. Xiaoran, dressed in a rented tuxedo, suddenly dropped to one knee and presented a bouquet of wilted roses. With what he thought was deep affection, he declared, "Luoluo, I've liked you since the moment I first saw you. Will you be my girlfriend? Get together, get together." The rowdy cheers were loud enough to lift the roof. Qin Luoluo clutched the hem of my clothes, her fingertips trembling. I pretended not to notice and kept recording with my phone raised. Suddenly, a notification popped up. Young Master Qin's $1 million fireworks show celebrates fiancé's birthday. In the accompanying image, the night sky over the riverbank was ablaze with light. Wow, so romantic. I deliberately handed my phone to the girl next to me. "Look at this, what a grand gesture." Before I could finish, Xiaoran cried out in alarm. Luoluo, she had fainted again. This time was worse than ever before. The doctor removed his stethoscope and said gravely, "Without treatment, you won't last a year." Flipping through the medical records, I almost burst out laughing. Over 3 years. Chin Luoluo stubbornly let a common heart condition deteriorate into a terminal illness. Then again, these days, you can't be a domineering CEO without some illness, and it's almost embarrassing to call yourself a female lead without a terminal disease. If she returned to the Chin family now, getting treatment, or even a heart transplant, would be a piece of cake, but could she really go back? I won't allow it. Chin Luoluo remained unconscious for 2 full days. I woke to the clamor of cicadas outside the window. It was Gaokao Day, seeing me by her hospital bed, her pale face filled with guilt. Sister Fu, I'm sorry, I made you miss the Gaokao. I shook my head gently. It's fine, I was already admitted through early acceptance. For some reason, those words only made Chin Luoluo burst into tears. She stared vacantly at the ceiling, her eyes terrifyingly hollow. The doctor said you need to continue treatment, or your condition will worsen, I said flatly. Dying wouldn't be so bad either. She suddenly let out a bitter laugh, her voice as faint as a wisp of smoke. Despite the doctors and my protests, she insisted on being discharged from the hospital. The doctor reluctantly presented the voluntary discharge form. She signed it without even glancing at the document, as if defying some invisible opponent. I quietly filed the paperwork away with her medical records. Back home, Chin Luoluo lay in bed like an empty shell, refusing all food and water. Not wanting to deal with her, I texted Xiaoran. He promptly took leave and rushed back. After getting home, I stood before the wall calendar, staring at the date circled in red. A cold smirk tugged at the corner of my mouth as I tossed the calendar into the trash. That morning, I went to Urgent to tutor my student. As usual, the key was hidden in the milk box by the door. At noon, I received a phone call. Then, with trembling hands, I called Xiaoran. The phone rang for a long time before he finally picked up. Fu Liangjing, I'm at work, he snapped impatiently. Xiaoran, my voice trembled with tears. The prison just called. My father is being released today. What? I thought it wasn't until next year. No, just 3 months. And he's seriously ill. Get home now, Xiaoran shouted. I immediately hailed a taxi, only to get stuck in cross-river traffic. What should have been a 30-minute trip ended up taking nearly an hour. Standing before the sealed door, the metallic scent of blood filled my nostrils, so thick it felt tangible, like a slimy tongue sliding down my throat, making me nauseous. I knew it worked. 3 years. I've waited a full 3 years. Fu Yao, fresh out of prison, couldn't wait to return to his old ways and set his sights on Chin Luoluo. I pushed the door open, and the scene before my eyes was even more perfect than I had imagined. Chin Luoluo lay collapsed on the ground like a broken ragdoll. Unconscious, that beast, Fu Yao, lay on his back in a pool of blood, his neck nearly severed from behind, his back a mangled mess of flesh, his eyes still frozen in the terror of his final moments. Xiaoran stood gripping a sharp cleaver, his white shirt was spattered with droplets of blood, like an abstract painting. At the sound of the door opening, he turned his head mechanically, his eyes hollow and empty like 2 black holes. Fu Liangjing, what do I do? I've killed someone. I calmed myself down. We can't call the police or turn ourselves in, otherwise, everyone will find out what happened to Luoluo. She wouldn't be able to live with that. Xiaoran let out a beast-like roar. Take the body and leave. Don't let anyone know what happened here. I'll tell Luoluo she was just sick and hallucinating. A glimmer of hope flashed in his eyes. Will she believe me? She will, I said with unwavering certainty. Leave this to me. But you must clean up thoroughly, make sure this doesn't get out. Ideally, let it end with you. Xiaoran took one last look at Chin Luoluo, his eyes filled with both anguish and resolve. Luoluo, I'm entrusting her to you. He went home, fetched a large suitcase, stuffed Fu Yao inside, and took him away. I woke Chin Luoluo up, told her everything, and had her take a shower to clean up. She obeyed my every command like a marionette. After that, she stared blankly at the ceiling, her soul seeming to have left her body. I took a closer look and realized, oh, she had passed out again, so I left her alone and instead kept my eyes fixed on Xiaoran's house. Finally, a burst of flames shot out from Xiaoran's window, accompanied by an explosion. The fire spread rapidly, lighting up the night sky. Screams echoed from downstairs as someone began dialing 119. My gaze remained fixed on one spot until Xiaoran appeared on the rooftop across the street. From my window, I could only see his silhouette against the light. He climbed onto the parapet and stood motionless, as if waiting for something. Then, amid the wail of fire engine sirens, he took a step forward. His body traced an arc through the air, like a bird with a broken wing. I couldn't hear the sound of impact, but I could have sworn I saw that burst of crimson bloom. In an instant, an electric thrill shot through my entire being, adrenaline surging, making me tremble. My fingers instinctively tightened on the windowsill as my breathing grew ragged. All the pent-up hatred, agony, and humiliation found perfect release in this moment. Then I slammed headfirst into the wall and lost consciousness. Sirens pierced the night air while red and blue lights pulsed across the street in front of the residential complex. Before setting the fire, Xiaoran doused the area with gasoline. Fu Yao's body was completely incinerated. When they carried him out, his skeletal remains had disintegrated. With gauze wrapped around my head, I sat huddled on the stair steps, watching the police officers moving in and out. The case was straightforward. After killing Fu Yao, Xiaoran jumped to her death. In the interrogation room, the officer asked me, "Were you at the scene when the crime occurred?" I shook my head. "No." When I got back, Fu Yao was already dead. I only saw Xiaoran covered in blood, repeatedly asking, "Did you kill my mother?" The officer said in shock, "What did you say?" I swallowed hard and shook my head. He was covered in blood and not in his right mind. I was terrified and kept urging him to turn himself in, but he threatened me with a knife. Wouldn't let me call the police. I tried to scream. He shoved me to the ground, and that's the last thing I remember. The officer glanced toward the security camera and continued, "Where were you? How did Fu Yao get a key?" "I've been tutoring immersion since the break started, including today. The spare keys always kept in the milk box. Xiaoran knows about it, and so does my dad." I genuinely had no idea Fu Yao was released early. The prison only contacted me for the first time today due to special circumstances. Qin Luoluo came over today because her neighbors were hosting a loud mahjong game. She showed up unannounced since the noise was bothering her. It was all a coincidence. If I hadn't been reborn, after 48 hours of interrogation, I was released. The police then reopened the case to investigate the disappearance of Xia Hongmei, Xiaoran's mother. She was buried under the duck shed back in my hometown, and her body had already turned to bones. The police came to our door again. "You were only 13 years ago. Do you still remember what happened?" Memories came flooding back. I had just arrived when Fu Yao took me back to our hometown. The village had many duck farmers. He took on the job of slaughtering ducks, but always brought the work home for me to do. One night a month later, Xia Hongmei slipped into the village. They drank together and ended up in bed. Fu Yao slept like a log. Whenever he got drunk, he'd black out completely, never remembering what he'd done. He often beat me. Xia Hongmei giggled drunkenly, bending forward until her garish nails nearly pierced my eyeballs. The stench of cheap perfume mixed with alcohol was particularly acrid. "Your parents are dead. Who else can you get money from?" The sharp cleaver was right within reach. Just as Xiaoran burst through the door and saw the kitchen knife on the table by the entrance, it felt just as natural. Blood splattered, warm against my face. I washed my face and hands, then went next door to sleep. The next morning, for the first time, Fu Yao didn't rush me to get up early. I slept in until the sun was high in the sky. He told me that Auntie Xia had returned to the city and made me promise not to tell anyone she'd been here. From then on, our family also built a duck shed and raised many ducks. The shed was perpetually filled with a foul smell. When the police unearthed Xia Hongmei's remains, they found many clues, all pointing to Fu Yao, since he was already dead, and Xiaoran and Xia Hongmei had no other relatives. The case was closed, but I called the police again. "Officer, I'm a child Fu Yao kidnapped, not his biological child. You can check. Everyone in the village knows. I can't have a father who's a rapist and murderer. That would disqualify me from civil service exams." The police ran DNA tests confirming we're not biologically related, and there's no legal adoption record. With testimonies from villagers about Fu Yao's abuse and domestic violence toward me, they issued an official victim status certificate. When they asked if I wanted help finding my biological family, I shook my head no. Stepping out of the police station, the autumn sun was so glaring I could barely keep my eyes open. The ginkgo trees along the roadside had carpeted the ground in gold. I bent down and picked up 4 perfectly intact leaves, then crushed one of them to pieces between my fingers. Qin Luoluo was still in the hospital, refusing to speak or eat. The staff had pressed me several times to settle the medical bills. I brought the ginkgo leaves with me to see her. She lay listlessly in the hospital bed like a flower deprived of water, withering away. I almost feel sorry for her, but when I think of our past life, it only feels like it wasn't enough. With nimble fingers, I twirled the golden leaves into butterflies, holding them by the stems and making them flutter. Luo. The ginkgo leaves outside have turned such a beautiful yellow. Get better soon, and I'll take you to see them. Qin Luo turned her gaze toward me, her eyes filled with a hatred that was veiled by tears. "Okay, I want to go back now." "Back where?" To the Chin residence, I shook my head. Not yet, you're still sick, and we owe the hospital a lot of money. Do you have any family? Tears streamed down Chin Luolua's face. She gestured for me to look at the diary. I opened it and saw she'd nearly filled the notebook, with a bank card tucked inside. It was the same one I'd seen before. It's honestly ridiculous. She could have just called her brother and solved everything, but she had to make things difficult for herself. In the end, you still gave in. What was the point of all that struggle in between? I took the card, went downstairs for a quick look around, then came back up and told her. There's not a single penny in this card. Chin Luoluo jolted violently, reaching out toward me, a trickle of blood seeping from the corner of her mouth. No, it can't be. He wouldn't do this to me. I gripped her hand tightly and said in a low voice, it's true. The card shows frozen with a balance of 0. She threw her head back and burst into tears, pulling out her phone to make a call. I nodded repeatedly. Yes, after such a terrible thing happened to you, you should tell your family right away. They can come pick you up, and you can forget all about this. Chin Luolua's hand went slack, her phone nearly slipping from her grasp, her eyes filled with utter despair and sorrow. Finally, she looked at me pleadingly and said, Sister Fu, could you find a way to help me pay the medical bills? Perfect. I got a full scholarship to W University with a 100,000 yuan bonus. That should cover it. She looked at me with gratitude in her eyes. After we completed the discharge paperwork, the doctor made it clear she had less than 3 months to live. I still couldn't bring myself to tell her. Xiairan's home was an illegally built shack to begin with. After the fire, the neighborhood committee had a bulldozed flat. She had no choice but to follow me to my place. Fu Yao's funeral portrait was hanging at the entrance. She didn't dare to step inside. I turned the portrait to face the wall. Only then did Chin Luoluo notice the urn on the floor, bearing Xiairan's black and white photograph. I murmured softly, look at him. He truly loved you. To spare you from gossip, he chose to end his life by jumping. He only killed to save you. It was self-defense. He shouldn't have died, nor even gone to prison. It was all because of you. Chin Luoluo hugged her knees, weeping like a vulnerable young animal stripped of its shelter. She looked at me pleadingly. Sister Fu, I don't want to stay here. Could you take me to a hotel? I don't have any money, I said, then ignored her completely. Take it or leave it. Living under someone else's roof. Chin Luoluo grew increasingly withdrawn, drifting through life like a ghost. She'd sleep through the day and stay up all night, writing in her diary for hours on end. The writing is utterly desolate and heart-wrenching. After I started college, I only came home once a week. Each time I saw her, she seemed to wither a little more. The food at home was barely touched. Finally, she had worn herself out completely, like a lamp flickering with its last bit of light. She finally decided to tell me her true identity. He begged me to visit her family so they could see her one last time. I'd already read her diary while she was unconscious. In our past life, only 1% of her entries criticized me, just for not taking good enough care of her. Yet Qin Lingqiao used that as an excuse to torment me in every way imaginable. But in this life, a full third of her writing condemns me. Earlier entries accused me of being arrogant and constantly swindling her out of money. After the assault happened, her words became filled with such bitter hatred, every syllable dripping with venom. If Qin Lingqiao ever saw this, he'd probably skin me alive. The Qin family's heiress. You, I chuckled, pulling a photo from my bag to show her. You know, I've had plastic surgery. This is what I used to look like. I held the photo right in front of her eyes. Then she swept aside her heavy bangs, removed the black-framed glasses, and instantly her whole demeanor brightened into radiant charm. Does this feel familiar? Her pupils abruptly constricted, her lips trembling as they parted. So you really could recognize me at a single glance. I tied up my hair, took back the photo. A cold curve forming at the corner of my lips. So, I wasn't wrong about you. He flung her to the ground. She thrashed like a fish out of water, her struggles futile as a hoarse threat rasped from her throat. If you kill me, my brother will make you pay. He's even frozen your cards. You're just deluding yourself. Besides, I have a little souvenir for him too. I chuckled softly, pulling a stack of photos from my bag and fanning them out before her eyes one by one. Like dealing a hand of cards, every single one was a surveillance still of Fu Yao assaulting her. The image was so sharp, every contorted expression on her face was clearly visible. Her mouth gaped wide in a silent scream, but her struggles were so feeble they didn't even startle the sparrows outside the window. I installed surveillance cameras at home long ago. I whispered softly by her ear, leaning close. I know you like to sneak into my place when I'm away, sleep in my bed. Turn on my air conditioning. I've been pretending not to know all along. Her breathing grew increasingly ragged, her gaze unfocused, like a cornered animal with nowhere left to run. I know Fu Yao is a slave to his lust, and with death looming, he'd jump at one last chance to be a playboy ghost. I sneered, though he's old, ugly, and filthy as a maggot, he's more than a match for a bastard like you. A homewrecker who commits incest and betrays all decency. I learned this trick from Qin Lingchao. Killing someone is nothing. Breaking their spirit is the true cruelty. Her fingers clutched the sheets so tightly her knuckles turned white, and she gasped for breath violently. By the way, haven't you been feeling unwell lately, nauseous? I tilted my head with a malicious grin. Congratulations, you're pregnant. I'll share this wonderful news with your brother. He'll be an uncle, and I'll be the sister. If you die, I'll bury your ashes with Fu Yao. Together for all eternity, never to part. A dying whimper escaped her throat, then her pupils suddenly dilated. After a few violent heaves of her chest, everything finally fell still. Dead, died of rage. The eyes remained wide open. I tried several times to close them, but they wouldn't stay shut. I suppose this must be how I died in my past life too, right? But her death was quick, just a few minutes, while I died in agony, forced to watch the child in my womb struggle and perish. So she still owes me. I dialed 120. By the time the ambulance arrived, she had already stopped breathing, and the doctor pronounced her dead upon arrival at the hospital. I cremated her and buried her ashes with that Scottish fold cat. After returning home, I carefully put away her belongings, her diary and bank card, and burned everything else to ashes. Then, sitting under the lamp, I turned the pages of her diary one by one. I took out another identical stationery diary from the cabinet. All these years, I've practiced copying her handwriting every single day. My forgeries are now indistinguishable from the real thing. Even if she saw it herself, she probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference. 2 of the 4 people on my list are already gone, but with my current status, I can't even get close to the remaining 2, but I'm in no hurry. Sweeping aside my bangs and removing my glasses revealed breathtaking beauty. My social circle at school kept expanding, occasionally bringing me into contact with wealthy individuals, allowing me to piece together information about the Qin family. Yet I didn't rush to enter the Qin family's circle. Instead, I waited for all traces of Qin Luoluo in this world to gradually fade with time, until I remained the only one connected to her memory. 3 years passed in the blink of an eye. That day, for our classmate Su Yang's birthday, the celebration was held in the banquet hall of the Imperial Hotel, a property owned by the Qin family, with floors above the 20th reserved for members only. Dressed in a champagne-colored gown, with meticulously applied makeup, I headed to the party with a gift in hand. The elevator's metal doors slid open abruptly as I waited. A man stood inside. He stood nearly 6'3". With broad shoulders and long legs, his powerful frame encased in a black suit, his face was sharply sculpted, with prominent brow bones and eyes so deep they seemed to swallow one's soul. I froze in place, even though I'd been looking for him and came today hoping to get lucky. Actually running into him still caught me completely off guard. Everyone in the elevator was staring at me, and my face instantly burned with embarrassment. "Coming up?" he asked, his voice low. "Why yes," I stammered, walking into the elevator with such clumsy, uncoordinated steps that I nearly tripped on my own dress, drawing a few soft chuckles from the others. My ears were burning with embarrassment. The hands behind me then very gallantly straightened my skirt, making my face flush even deeper. "Thank you," I whispered, my voice barely audible. Thankfully, my floor arrived quickly. The moment the doors opened, I bolted out as if making a run for it. Only after I turned the corner and the elevator doors slid shut did I allow myself to tremble violently. It's him, my lover from a past life, the father of my child, and one of the hands that pushed us toward our deaths. We were once intimate, our bodies and souls entwined. It wasn't until my dying breath that I discovered it was all a lie. He was a hunter sent by Qin Lingchao, tasked with luring me into ruin and casting me into hell at the peak of my happiness. Even a vicious tiger wouldn't harm its own cub. He's lower than a beast. In my past life, he told me his name was He Yen, but later I heard Qin Lingchao call him Ah Hua. Even his name was a lie, but no matter what, I finally saw him again. In the banquet hall, I handed the gift to Su Yang and quietly took a seat in the corner. My classmates see me as quiet, almost aloof, so they were genuinely surprised I showed up to the birthday party. "Fu, I didn't actually think you'd come," Su Yang said as he approached, a gentle smile on his face and the tips of his ears tinged pink. "He's the class monitor. Back when I took time off to deal with Qin Luolua's situation, he was the one who lent me his notes. Sorry if I haven't been the best host. It's lovely, I said with a shy smile, pressing my lips together. This is my first time at an event like this, so I'm still getting used to it. Please don't let me keep you. I'll find a seat on my own. I was so broke I had to rent this dress, and I felt completely out of place here. But Soo-young looked at me earnestly, his eyes gentle. That's a beautiful dress. You're one of the most radiant women here tonight. I thanked him politely. Would you care to dance? He extended his hand. The music playing was a standard ballroom dance, one I'd learned freshman year. After a moment's hesitation, I shook my head. I'm not very good. Well, you're already here, he said with a wink. Look how terribly everyone else is dancing. They're all classmates. No one will mind. I glanced around and saw he was right. A faint smile escaped my lips. In the end, he pulled me onto the dance floor. The music was enchanting, but I was even more so, the center of attention for everyone in the room. Usually composed, Soo-young was unusually stiff today. His face flushed crimson. Liang-jing, you dance better than I do. Just giving it a try. I replied with a slight nod before turning toward the bar. Then, I ran into He Lianhua again. He was leaning against the bar, his slender fingers wrapped around a whiskey glass, the amber liquid reflecting in his deep-set eyes. I casually picked up a cocktail from a waiter's tray. Just as I was hesitating whether to approach him, a classmate waved at me from across the room. I gave him a nod and turned to leave. Do you know that long legs guy? The female classmate whispered, leaning closer. No. I don't, liar. He was staring at you the entire time you were dancing with Soo-young. I really don't know them, I murmured, taking a sip of the cloyingly sweet drink that left me pleasantly lightheaded, barely tasting any alcohol. Chatting and watching the dancers, I lost track of how many glasses I'd had. When everything started doubling in my vision, I shook my head and grabbed my purse, my head spinning. I'm going to the restroom. The cold water splashed against my face. And in the mirror, my cheeks were flushed, my gaze hazy, as I stumbled out, leaning against the wall. The whole world spun around me. The next moment, I fell into a solid embrace. The scent of cedar instantly enveloped me. The scent was so familiar it twisted my stomach into knots. Those nights falling asleep in his arms, that illusion of having found my home. Turns out I never truly forgot any of it. Later memories blurred like watercolor paintings left in the rain. The scorching breaths in the elevator, the chill of the wall against my back when he pinned me, his ragged, husky gasps in the dark when desire took over. I know exactly how to make him lose control. The pressure of fingertips tracing the waistline, the perfect moment to bite his lower lip, even the subtle pauses in his breathing, the frequency and rhythm of his tremors. He trained me in every detail himself. When I woke up the next day, sunlight streamed through the sheer curtains, flooding the large bed. I was alone in the suite, my body sore. I gathered my scattered clothes, took a quick shower, and hurried away. Only when I opened my phone did I notice a photo of an embossed business card in the album. He Yen, and a string of numbers. In our previous life, when we first met, he was a downcast man who had just been laid off and was barely scraping by delivering food. This time around, he exudes an elite aura, but he's still using a fake name. Did he learn that from Liu Xiaobu? His status doesn't matter to me. I just needed him to show up. Only after deleting the photos and returning home did I fully relax, allowing myself to replay everything in my head. I can actually hold my liquor quite well. I just flush easily. I was fully conscious every second last night, from my accidental fall into his arms outside the restroom, to my arms wrapped around his neck, to every whispered yes. In his previous life, he should have been abroad at this time. When I overheard him on the phone last night saying he'd be back in a few days, I knew the opportunity was fleeting. I've waited far too long, and I'm not waiting any longer. After the birthday party, Soo-young and I quickly became close. I get the feeling he might like me, which honestly makes me a bit uneasy. He's such a wonderful person, but I don't deserve someone like him. My life went off the rails when I was 6. The only reason I'm still here is to get justice for myself and my parents. Over a month had passed since that day, and winter break was just around the corner. The day before the holiday, Soo-young asked me out to see a movie. The more time we spent together, the more I realized what a genuinely kind guy he was, bringing me an umbrella on rainy days, walking me back to my dorm, remembering my usual spot in the library, even rushing to the distant cafeteria to grab me those coveted spare ribs. He felt like the most typical college guy you'd ever meet. If only I were just an ordinary girl, we could have had a simple, normal campus romance. But there are no what-ifs. He stood grinning at the cinema entrance, popcorn in one hand and roses in the other, waiting for me to show up. I was hiding around the corner, with tears welling in my eyes. I pulled out my phone to text him. Soo-young, I see you there. I do love roses. But I am not a rose. Su-yang anxiously scanned the surroundings. I forwarded a link to him. It was a message from Fu Yao. This man is my father. I watched Su-yang open his phone, his expression shifting from anticipation to shock, then turning ashen. He placed the roses on top of the trash can and walked away. What decent person would ever accept the daughter of a rapist? A bitter wind whipped fine snowflakes into swirling eddies down the deserted street. I stood under the dim yellow street light, looking down at my own shadow stretched long and lonely. A cold sensation landed on my face. I looked up and watched the snowflakes fall like shards of jade, whispering down from the sky. A snowflake settled on my fingertip, but before I could make out its delicate edges, it had already melted into a single, glistening drop of water. Suddenly, the curtain of snow above me was parted. Turning around, I saw He Lianhua holding an umbrella, his tall frame haloed in a hazy glow from the street lamp like some celestial being, yet I knew all too well the venomous heart that lay beneath that beautiful facade. In my panic, I stumbled backward, my heel catching in the gap of the curb. Just as I leaned back, his strong arm wrapped around my waist. The familiar scent of cedar enveloped me, mingled with a faint hint of tobacco that caught me off guard and made me cough. "Why didn't you call me?" His deep voice brushed past my ear, his warm breath stirring the strands of hair on my forehead. I nervously clutched the hem of my clothes, letting him tilt my chin up. His kiss came suddenly and fiercely, as if trying to steal every last breath from my lungs. Our relationship progressed by leaps and bounds, and I mean that quite literally. When the new year came around, we each went back to our own homes. On New Year's Eve, I prepared 6 simple dishes myself as the reunion dinner. Fireworks were going off outside. I pushed open the window and saw him downstairs, looking up at me with a smile brighter than the fireworks. In that moment, his gentle eyes almost made me believe he was a good man, my prince. My heart was cold, but I painted an expression of boundless delight on my face, flung open the door, rushed down the stairs, and threw myself into his arms like a fledgling bird returning to the forest. His scorching kisses, like molten lava, engulfed and melted me. With the arrow notched, he suddenly paused. "Do you have any?" Blinking as I processed his meaning, I flushed and shook my head. "No." As I tried to retreat under the covers, he pulled me into his embrace. "If you get pregnant, you're having my baby." The next day was Chinese New Year. All the restaurants outside were closed. It was snowing, and I didn't feel like going out, so I just heated up a couple of dishes to make do. He looked a bit displeased and said, "It's the first day of the new year, and this is what we're having." I slammed the bowl down on the table. "Eat it or don't, I don't care." He wrapped his arms around me. All right, Fu Liangjing, you're really developing a temper lately." I pulled out my phone and sent a message. Soon after, a delivery person from a 5-star hotel knocked on our door. Despite the exquisite dishes, we ended up making a complete mess while eating. Afterwards, I rinsed off under the hot water, took a pill bottle from the cabinet, shook out a tablet, and swallowed it down. He Lianhua and I seemed close on the surface, yet he never shared anything about himself with me. As things stood, if he were to suddenly disappear one day, I wouldn't even know where to begin looking. He never had any intention of letting me into his life. I need to find my own way to get close to Qin Lingchao. The steam hadn't yet cleared from the bathroom when I stepped out, towel drying my hair. He was already waiting for me with the hairdryer. His fingers moved gently through my strands, as if I were something precious. I was looking down, applying hair oil, when his phone rang. With just one glance at the screen, the warmth in his eyes instantly froze over, replaced by a shadow of gloom. "I have to go," he said, grabbing his jacket in a move that sent a chill through the air. I grabbed the hem of his shirt, my voice still thick with unshed tears. "Aren't you going to spend time with me today?" He turned and pinched my cheek, a perfunctory smile playing on his lips. "Don't be difficult, I really have things to do." But I didn't let go, my nails nearly digging into his sleeve as I bit my lip. "Are you married?" He paused for a moment, then let out a soft laugh. "What made you think that?" I threw myself into his arms, my eyes stinging as I looked up. "You never reach out to me first, never share anything about your life, no shopping trips, no movies, you haven't even had one meal with me." My fingers tightened around his shirt. "Am I just some convenient booty call to you?" He suddenly burst into laughter, pinning me down on the edge of the bed. "You're my woman." His scorching breath brushed against my earlobe as his hand slipped beneath my clothes. I tried to struggle, but he pinned my wrists above my head. This is his favorite side of me, innocent and fragile, with my hair splayed across the pillow, lashes fluttering with shyness, yet my body opening to him with raw honesty. He didn't even bother to take off his clothes. Standing by the bed, his dress pants still impeccably hugging his long legs, the belt buckle swayed near my thighs like a blur. I couldn't see his face, only hear his stifled gasps for air. This affair swept in like a sudden storm, fierce and fleeting. Before I could catch my breath, he was already pulling away, leaving nothing but a feather-light kiss on my lips. "Be good," he said, buckling his belt without a backward glance before walking out. The engine roared to life downstairs. By the time I dashed barefoot to the window, all I managed to catch was the last few digits of the license plate. After that day, he vanished into thin air. Calls went straight to voicemail, messages left unread, just when I thought this lead had gone cold. A golden opportunity fell right into my lap. Qin Lingchao was actually coming to our university as a distinguished alumnus to give a speech. He went to our school. Su Yang nodded with a smile. In a manner of speaking, he was admitted back then, but later went abroad for studies. He even donated a library to the university, hence the distinguished alumnus title. The lecture hall was packed with students that day. The female students in particular had all dressed to the nines. As if walking the red carpet, I wore an elegant linen dress, my hair styled in a retro braid, with minimal makeup. I simply tied a dark green lace ribbon into a bow, letting it rest gently against my chest. Amidst the sea of girls with their heavy or light makeup, my fresh and natural look made me stand out from the crowd. So eager to get his attention, Su Yang appeared behind me, his fingers lightly brushing the green ribbon in my hair. I met his gaze calmly. "The background check at Qin Corporation is too strict. I need a recommender with enough clout." Su Yang's expression immediately softened with concern. "I'll help you." As a member of the student council and a rich second-generation heir, he had some connections. Soon enough, he got me into the reception team. When I stood before Qin Lingchao, his eyes widened in shock at the sight of the green ribbon in my hair. The speech ended abruptly, with all subsequent proceedings cancelled as he made a swift exit. His assistant cut through the crowd and approached me directly, asking, "Miss, would you mind sharing your contact information?" Suppressing my racing heartbeat, I handed over the prepared resume. My phone soon vibrated with a friend request notification, immediately followed by another message. "Fu, could you come to the East Library?" That library was donated by the Qin family. When I arrived, there was a "Closed Today" sign at the entrance. Qin Lingchao, 26 years old, was tall and long-legged with handsome features. His slightly upturned eyes held a touch of aloofness as he stood before the massive floor-to-ceiling window, reminiscent of a medieval nobleman. I pushed the door open, stepped inside quietly, and approached him with some hesitation. He motioned for me to come closer. His eyes were fixed on the green ribbon in my hair. "Forgive my forwardness, Miss Fu, but would you mind taking off this ribbon so I can have a closer look?" After my initial surprise, I unfastened it without hesitation. The fine fabric smoothed back into perfect shape with just a gentle stroke. Qin Lingchao took it, and upon seeing it clearly, his hands began to tremble involuntarily. "Classmate Fu, may I ask where you got this green lace ribbon?" "It was a gift from my close friend." "What's her name? Where is she?" I lowered my head sadly. "Her name was Qin Luoluo. She's passed away." "What?" Qin Lingchao looked as if struck by lightning. His eyes filled with anguish as he roared at me. "Impossible." I recoiled as if startled, stepping back repeatedly. You knew her." His pain deepened. "She's my sister." I was utterly stunned. "She never told me." With his strikingly handsome features and profound devotion, his red-rimmed eyes evoked an instinctive tenderness, making one yearn to smooth away the sorrow etched between his brows. Yet my gaze remained fixed on his throat, burning with a desire to slit it open. I got into his Rolls-Royce and we drove to my place together. I had gathered all of Qin Luoluo's belongings in a single cardboard box: medical records, hospital admission documents, various receipts, payment slips, a diary, and a few photos of me, Xiaoran, and Qin Luoluo taken at the riverbank. Qin Lingchao gently caressed the photographs, handling them with great care. Then he opened the diary. I had spent 6 long years preparing for this. Every stroke of the pen, every nuance of tone, it was flawless, a true labor of love. And now, it was finally being read. I trembled with emotion, covering my eyes and turning away as if I couldn't bear to watch. It was just under 200 entries, less than 10,000 words in total. Qin Lingchao read from morning until dusk, well into the night, without eating or drinking. I didn't offer him anything either, except for a small cup of water. He never moved, but the tears never stopped. I never knew a man could cry this much. It's from Qin Luoluo's diary, truly touching. Not a single word speaks of love, yet every line is filled with it, lingering affection, pure longing, no trace of resentment, just the fullness of regret. Back then, even netizens were moved, let alone those directly involved. Qin Lingchao's tears fell silently at first, but soon he was sobbing uncontrollably. His back hunched as if all support had been ripped away from him. Only when the driver urged him did he drag his leaden legs downstairs and leave, stumbling with every step as though his soul had departed along with Chin Luoluo. The next day, after my class ended, I saw him waiting at the entrance. In just one night, he seemed utterly shattered. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, stubble framed his lips, yet his handsome features now carried a deeper, more mature allure. The students all looked shocked. "Fu, let's have a talk. I have a class soon, so we'll have to sit in the school cafeteria." He pulled out a marriage contract and placed it right in front of me. What kind of twisted logic is this? I just wrote in my diary, adopting Chin Luolua's voice, that we were like sisters. I took great care of her. She owed me a lot, and I hoped her family would repay me on her behalf, and this is how they repay me. They might as well have just given me cash. Besides, how could I possibly marry Chin Lingchao? That would be a sin against heaven. Impossible. Luoluo told me she has a stepbrother who's actually the love of her life. Is that you? We're as close as sisters. How could I steal the man she loves? She'd never rest in peace. Besides, I already have feelings for someone else. When I mentioned her brother being the love of her life, Chin Lingchao's face went completely pale. He braced his hands against the table so hard the entire surface trembled. You loved her too, didn't you? How could you marry someone else? How could you betray her memory like this? Chin Lingchao declared imperiously. I need to get married. You were Luoluo's closest friend, the person she felt indebted to, the one who'll cherish her memory forever. No one could be more suitable than you. I steadied myself, clenching my fists tightly. Are you suggesting a marriage of convenience, just keeping her place warm? Chin Lingchao's tone was as detached as if he were commenting on the pleasant weather. Yes, you're free to keep loving whoever you want. I won't interfere. I started thinking seriously. Chin Lingchao had been the Chin family's heir since childhood. With his high IQ, elite education, and training in various combat arts from an early age, he was both scholarly and martial, surrounded constantly by assistants, drivers, and bodyguards. Getting close to him was nearly impossible. The same was true for He Lianhua. With my abilities, killing them would be nothing short of a pipe dream. Marrying him turned out to be the only way I could get close to him. My eyes welled up with tears as I kept shaking my head. No, I really can't. He flipped to the last page of the document, only to find Fu Ya's information. From petty theft in his youth to multiple stints behind bars, his record is riddled with misdeeds. I'm sure you wouldn't want your classmates to find out about this. Just as I thought. All these years haven't changed him a bit, still as arrogant and high-handed as ever, like a puppet on strings. I let him drag me to the Civil Affairs Bureau and register our marriage. Back at school, I saw Su Yang waiting under the cherry blossom tree, his shoulders dusted with pale pink petals. The youth stood fresh and vibrant, his eyes brimming with sincerity. Tears began streaming down my cheeks. He rushed over in long strides, pulling me into an embrace. What's wrong? Did he hurt you? I was sobbing uncontrollably. He held me tight, patting my back as if comforting a child. Take your time, just take your time. I pulled out the marriage certificate we had just obtained. He opened it and his eyes widened in shock. Why? I told him everything. He's biting the hand that feeds him. You didn't consent to this. You can sue him. Don't be afraid. I shook my head. He said he just needed me to hold the position, that we wouldn't have any marital obligations to each other. In 4 years, he'll fully take over the Chin Corporation, and then he'll set me free. Su Yang clenched his fist. And you agreed. You sold off your own marriage. I jerked my head up and shoved him away. That's right. I sold it. For a fortune. He promised me 100 million when we divorce. I shook off his hand, turned, and ran without looking back, ignoring his shouts behind me. Even though Chin Lingzhao and I had gotten our marriage certificate, nothing in our daily lives changed. He'd occasionally text me to ask about Chin Luoluo. At first I responded, but then I got annoyed and just ignored them. Graduation was just around the corner, and many of my classmates had already started internships. That day, I went to my dorm to pack my things and called a ride to take everything home. When I got home, I saw a luxurious pink supercar parked downstairs. Leaning against the car door was a stunning woman wearing sunglasses. I recognized her immediately. She was Chin Lingchao's fiancé, Li Manny. No, his ex-fiancé. She stormed over to me, and I said, hold on, let me get my things upstairs first, then we can talk. Alright. The mover helped me carry all the boxes upstairs. I only had a bag in my hand and invited her in, saying, sorry about the mess. My place is a bit humble. I'm afraid I'm not much of a host. She looked utterly disgusted but held back her displeasure as she stepped inside. Seeing the place was spotless, she bit back any sarcastic remarks. I know you're in a hurry, but just hold your horses. Before we talk, Please take a look at this first. I showed her my iPad. It was filled with the diary entries I'd taken of Chin Luoluo. Limani only read a few entries before her eyes nearly popped out of her head. So, they're into that whole sibling thing. I had no idea about Chin Luoluo's real identity until Qin Lingzhao showed up. She'd mentioned a brother she'd liked since childhood, but I thought it was just a term of endearment. I never imagined it was her actual brother, so there's no need to be angry with me. I was just a pawn in their game. No, more like an employee. In 4 years, he's promised to pay me 100 million. Limani was utterly speechless. What a scumbag. Is he out of his mind? 6 years ago, Chin Luoluo was only 16. And he was already that deeply in love with her. So they must have started. Jesus, what a creep. She rubbed her arms. The fact that Limani could marry into the Qin family meant she wasn't from an ordinary background either. While not quite on par with the Qins, her family wasn't far behind. She looked at me sympathetically. Do you have feelings for Su Yang? My fingers curled up involuntarily. She slammed the table. Outrageous. He even resorted to forced marriage and plunder. Did he coerce you, or threaten you? With tears welling in my eyes, I could only shake my head repeatedly. I've known since my previous life that Limani has a chivalrous and warm-hearted nature. In that life, she married Qin Lingchao and ended up no better than I did. During the financial crisis, the entire Li family was sacrificed to help the Qin family survive the crisis. Qin Lingchao became the youngest billionaire, while she was reduced to a mere ornament. Completely devoid of her former vitality and radiance. Don't be afraid, from now on, you're a friend of mine, Limani. Alright. I woke up in the middle of the night from the heat, only to find myself in He Lianhua's arms. I sank my teeth into his shoulder and snarled, "Get off me." His hands tightened around my waist. Why should Qin Lingchao get to marry my woman, while I can't have his wife? As if some taboo had been broken. He grew even wilder, kneading and tossing me around like a piece of dough. Finally, the storm subsided. He held me close, pressing his lips to my sweat-dampened hair at the temple. Tell me, what happened? Why did he suddenly decide to marry you? I turned away from him. Where were you? You're never around when I need you. And now you show up out of nowhere. Who are you trying to impress? He wrapped his arms around me from behind, his hands beginning to wander. I was abroad and didn't see what happened. I'm back now. And I've got your back. I stared at him. How can I endure this? Who are you really? How did you know about our marriage registration? His palm slid over my lower abdomen, his knuckles cold as serpent scales. Never mind who I am. He chuckled darkly, his voice laced with venom. Just know this, once I get you with child, I'll have every right to enter the Qin family and claim all they possess. A chill ran through me, yet strangely, I wasn't that shocked. He was a rabid dog to begin with, capable of anything. Are you even speaking human language? My voice trembled. He let out a scornful laugh, his eyes swirling with malice. What do you know? The Qin Corporation rightfully belongs to the He family. Who are you really? I stared at him intently. What's your connection to Qin Lingchao? His breath was hot and menacing. By the Qin family's reckoning, you should call me cousin. The He family. Old Master Qin's first wife was indeed a He. She married down with an enormous dowry, which laid the foundation for the Qin family's current standing. But didn't the He line die out? Wait, no. I vaguely recall that after Madame He married, distant relatives scrambled to have their sons adopted into her family, hoping to get a piece of the pie. Could He Lianhua be one of them? If that's the case, he and Qin Lingchao aren't blood relatives. I breathed a quiet sigh of relief. He Lianhua was clearly serious. Unfortunately, those days fell during my safe period. Gradually, I pieced together the truth from his words. He was indeed the He family's adopted heir. Secretly groomed by the Qins but exiled overseas for years. My guess is he's the Qins' black glove, handling their dirty work in the shadows. And now, this attack dog is finally turning on its master. The night before he left, he rested his hand on my stomach and said, I won't be gone long this time. I'll be back soon. I feigned unease. But what if I really am pregnant? Qin Lingchao and we've barely even met. He brushed his lips against the corner of my mouth, a chilling smile playing on his face. Don't worry. Once you're pregnant, I'll take care of everything. How? I clutched the sheets tightly. Won't the Qin family demand a paternity test? He chuckled darkly, his eyes glinting with venom. Of course they will. But what if Qin Lingzhao meets with an accident? His thumb stroked my carotid artery. The dead can't take DNA tests. My pupils contracted sharply. Are you going to kill him? Can't bear to part. He gripped my chin. Or, his voice turned seductive. Are you unwilling to become the Dowager Empress of the Qin clan? I sneered. Dowager Empress. Seems to me you're the one angling to be Lu Buwei. He burst into laughter, his chest rumbling like a bloodthirsty wolf bearing its ambition. Exactly, you were always mine. He's the one who tried to steal you. I wouldn't have thought of it otherwise. I buried my face against his chest, clutching his lean waist tightly. I'll do as you say, but you must arrange everything perfectly. We cannot be discovered. A couple of days later, I got my period. He Lianhua was quite disappointed and went abroad on business. I signed up for a postgraduate entrance exam prep course. Su Yang is preparing for the civil service exam, at the same institution. We haven't seen each other since that unpleasant parting, but he often messages me. That day, after attending a classmate's wedding, it was pouring rain when I stepped out, and he suddenly showed up downstairs at my place. He was still wearing a raincoat, this big dark figure looming there. It gave me quite a start. I quickly ushered him inside. What's wrong? Only when he took off his raincoat did I notice he was wearing a white shirt and tie, carefully cradling a bouquet of white lily of the valley. It was the bridal bouquet from the wedding earlier. The thought of this grown man scrambling with a group of women for the bouquet struck me as both amusing and poignant. His eyes were red. I'm sorry about last time at the cinema. I shouldn't have walked away like that. I should have been brave enough to give you that bouquet of roses. Fu Liangjing, I like you. I reached out and took the flowers, inhaling their fragrance deeply. Then I pulled him by his tie and kissed him on the lips. He raised his hands in surprise. Miss Fu, have you had too much to drink? I hadn't been drinking at all. Someone just accidentally spilled wine on me, so I went to the room to rest. Otherwise, I would have realized he was the groomsman much earlier. Are you thinking about taking advantage of the situation? His face flushed bright red. No, we can't. We can't. No, it's not that. It's just not right. I wrapped both arms around his neck. I think you're wonderful. You're the best. And I like you so much. I really, really do. Su Yang's face flushed. His breathing grew rapid. And finally, just as I guided his hand to my waist, he swept me up into his arms. When the morning light filtered through the sheer curtains, I woke up in his embrace. He woke up too. And when our eyes met, we both blushed. His eyes sparkled like starlight. I snuggled into his arms. You really don't want to mess with a guy in the morning. I'm completely exhausted and can't bring myself to move a muscle. He, on the other hand, had enough energy to get up and buy me breakfast. For 3 days, my home became an isolated paradise. Liangjing, why don't we give us a chance? Let's go talk to Qin Lingzhao. Just give me a little time, and I'll find the right moment to ask him. Su Yang pressed his lips together, his eyes full of hurt. But I don't want to wait. We shouldn't have to hide our relationship like it's something shameful. But he said if I don't cooperate, he'll spread the story about my father for everyone to know. Could you really bear to see me in that situation? I asked him. I'm sorry. I won't ask any more. Please don't cry. Shoo, no more tears. He gently wiped away my tears as if I were a fragile treasure. My conviction grew stronger. And I became even more infatuated with him. He's really going all out. Before leaving, he made a few dishes and put them in the fridge, then reluctantly headed home. I should get going now, or my mom will really come looking for me. I replied wearily. Okay. He gently touched my waist and whispered shyly, should I come back tonight? Would you like that? Yes, I'll be waiting. He came over for several days in a row. Finally, on the 12th day of our secret rendezvous, I dreamt of a great white goose swimming toward me. Its eyes lively and spirited, splashing up huge waves of water. I felt a sudden intuition. I hurriedly called He Lianhua and, after pestering him relentlessly, managed to get him to drop his affairs abroad and come back to keep me company for 2 days. Sure enough, when my period was due, it never came. I bought test strips and tested for several days in a row until finally 2 lines appeared. I sent the news to He Lianhua. He flew back overnight, held me tightly, and said, I'll take care of everything. A week later, Rimani sent me an invitation to her birthday party. That evening, I dressed meticulously and stepped into the banquet hall in high heels, finding a corner perfect for watching the drama unfold, my eyes brimming with anticipation. The crystal chandeliers cast shimmering light over the mingling crowd, where elegant figures and intoxicating perfumes created an atmosphere of sheer opulence. The arrival of Qin Lingzhao sent the energy in the room soaring to its peak. The Qin and Li families had been bound by marriage for years, but recently called off their engagement out of the blue, sparking all sorts of speculation online. Tonight's little performance was merely to stabilize the business partnership between the 2 families. They stood side by side, wearing perfectly polite smiles as if they had truly just reverted to being friends. The 2 even shared the opening dance. You have to admit, Qin Lingzhao is truly a dazzling man, handsome, wealthy, and principled. Every woman in the room had their eyes on him. But just before the banquet began, he suddenly swayed slightly, through the crowd, his eyes glinted coldly, his voice low and tense as he looked at me. Liang, come here. All eyes turned toward us in unison. My ears burned, but I had to walk over and ask from a few steps away, what's wrong? He suddenly grabbed my wrist, his breath scorching hot. Get me out of here, now. His palm was burning hot, his knuckles turning white from the force of his grip. I realized, he'd been drugged. Rimani had booked out 3 entire floors of the hotel, and I quickly found a suite. I could hear noises coming from inside the room. Sitting on the sofa in the outer room, I covered my ears and muttered. Nothing's going to go wrong, right? Leaning against the window, Lianhua gently tapped the rim of his wine glass, a slight smile playing on his lips. Don't worry, it's foolproof. That night felt exceptionally long. I fell into a deep sleep on the sofa and woke to find Qin Lingzhao gone. The room had been tidied, leaving only a faint trace of fur scent. A month later, I sent him a photo of the positive pregnancy test. He personally took me to the Qin family's private hospital for a full set of examinations. The moment I saw 4W1D on the report, I finally let out a sigh of relief. The plan had succeeded. In the main hall of the Qin family's ancestral home, rosewood chairs stood in solemn rows. Qin Lingzhao stood before the crowd, his voice calm and clear. This is Liang Jing, my lawful wife. We're officially married. And now she's pregnant. The air instantly turned icy, though I come from an ordinary family. I have a solid education, elegant looks, and a decent social circle. Elder Qin seemed quite pleased, while the other branches of the family wore mixed expressions. The second wife's nails dug into her palms, her eyes brimming with undisguised malice. Liang Jing, our Akeo can be so thoughtless. He didn't even tell the family when you two got your marriage license. Grandpa Qin said affectionately. After the baby is born, I'll arrange a proper wedding ceremony for you both. How does that sound? I nodded obediently. That sounds wonderful. What followed were the family introductions, the traditional tea ceremony, and receiving an array of lavish gifts. Grandpa Qin then asked the nanny to show me to my room to rest, keeping Qin Lingzhao behind to speak with him alone. The Qin family ancestral home is a sprawling Chinese-style garden, complete with pavilions, terraces, and winding paths that lead to secluded spots. Qin Lingzhao lived in a 5-story villa next to the main building. He occupied the 2nd floor, while I was assigned to the 5th. Pushing open the carved wooden window, the night breeze swept in, carrying with it the fresh scent of plants and trees. Gazing at the overlapping layers of rooftops, my thoughts drifted far away. After what felt like an eternity, a knock came at the door. Qin Lingzhao stood at the doorway, his handsome features etched with exhaustion. I'm sorry, he said, his voice hoarse. That day, I was drugged. I let out a cold laugh. Isn't it a little late for apologies now? If you're truly sorry, then stay out of my sight. You only ever cause trouble, and this undying love you claim to have for Luoluo, it's utterly hypocritical. Born with a silver spoon in his mouth, this was the first time he'd been treated so harshly. His frame swayed slightly before he finally walked away in silence. It wasn't until I moved into the Qin residence that I discovered why Qin Lingzhao had become so gaunt. Ever since learning of Qin Luoluo's death, he had taken to heavy drinking. Multiple bouts of alcohol poisoning had left him with stomach bleeding and liver damage. The irony was truly bitter. His self-destructive behavior is the spitting image of Qin Luoluo. I thought even if Lianhua didn't lift a finger, he'd eventually drive himself to ruin. After staying at the Qin family's ancestral home for half a month, I knocked on old Master Qin's study door and asked to go home. The old man looked up from behind the rosewood desk, his gaze through the gold-rimmed glasses sharp and appraising. Leaving so soon after just a few days, I stood with downcast eyes on the carpet, feeling the intricate embroidery patterns beneath my feet. Outside the window, bamboo shadows swayed gracefully, casting dappled silhouettes on the rice paper lattice, just as they had so very long ago. It's just that I'm not used to it. Not used to it. The dragon-headed cane struck the floor with a thud. As a Qin family daughter-in-law, you can't even handle this much pressure. I slowly looked up and retrieved a craft paper envelope from my clutch. The inexplicable essential oils on the bathroom floor, the tiny glass beads scattered on the staircase, the cold-natured blood-activating dishes that kept appearing on the dining table. Old Master Qin's pupils constricted abruptly, the paper rustling faintly in his trembling hands. The next day, he issued a direct order banishing all other branches of the family from the ancestral home, permitting their return only during major holidays. After my pregnancy stabilized, I was finally allowed to go out. In the private room of the cafe, the door swung open, and the sight of that familiar figure made me catch my breath. Su Yang was so thin he was almost unrecognizable. his suit jacket hanging loosely from his shoulders. My eyes instantly welled up with tears. The news of my pregnancy and moving into the Qin family had already reached many ears, so it's no surprise at all that Su Yang found out. Of course, he should also know exactly why I ended up pregnant. Qin Lingqiao later confronted Li Mani, convinced she was the one who drugged me, and even threatened to ruin her family's business, but I stepped in to mediate, buying Li Mani enough time to eventually uncover the real culprit. Of course, I was also the scapegoat arranged by He Lianhua. Li Mani was deeply grateful to me, felt even more sorry for my situation, and firmly believed that Qin Lingqiao was mentally unstable. Su Yang knew all the twists and turns of the matter. That's why he was filled with hatred and rage. Though he requested to meet several times, I turned him down every time. Liang Jing, is the child mine or his? I touched my slightly swollen belly. I've had it checked. 3 months. He and I only got together 4 months ago. At 3 months, it can't be his. He held me gently. It's alright. It's alright. I'm just glad you're okay. What are you planning to do? He said he'd let me go once I give birth to the child. Then will you leave? I don't know. That's why I came to tell you. We're breaking up. Don't wait for me anymore. Su Yang tightened his arms around me. Why am I the one being pushed away? You love me, don't you? Yes. I looked at him. But we're from different worlds. Su Yang. You're wonderful. It's me who doesn't deserve you. Please let go. I won't let go. I'm not a burden. I'll help you. We'll take him to court. I almost laughed. How could he be so naive? But I'm the young madam of a trillion-dollar conglomerate. My child is the heir apparent. I don't want to leave anymore. Su Yang stared at me in disbelief. You lied to me, but it's fine. My family has money too. Come deceive me. I'll give you everything I have. I shook my head. Believe what you want. It's over between us. If you ever truly loved me, swallow these words and never speak of them to anyone. The look in his eyes reminded me of a wounded young animal, yet I hardened my heart and refused to look. As I stepped out of the cafe, the autumn wind swept fallen leaves into my embrace. In the rearview mirror, that straight-backed figure gradually shrank to a tiny dot before vanishing completely. I wiped my face and only then noticed my palm was slick with moisture. Returning to the old house, I was met with the last person I expected to see, Lianhua He. Grandpa Qin said cheerfully, "Where has Liang Jing gone?" He went to the bookstore to get some books for his grad school prep, met up with a friend, and had some coffee. Grandpa, who's this? This is Lianhua. You can call him cousin. Hello, cousin. Lianhua's gaze lingered on my eyes for a moment before curving his lips into a smile. Hello, sister-in-law. Grandpa, I'm a bit tired. I'm heading back first. Alright, we'll have dinner together later. Akeo will be back too. Okay. I went back to my room, took a shower first, and then lay down on the bed. I had just dozed off for a bit when I felt a weight settle beside me. Are you trying to get us killed? If anyone sees us, we're done for. Lianhua leaned in for a kiss. They're all my people. Of course I knew. If it weren't for his arrangements, I would have died countless times already. The Qin family was truly a den of danger. Be gentle. I bit my lip, not daring to make a single sound. He braced his arms on either side of me, looking down at me from above. Fu Lianjing, what's going on between you and Su Yang? My heart skipped a beat. Just a classmate. His eyes darkened. I'll give you one more chance. My heart fluttered unexpectedly. He has feelings for me. And you, who do you like? I gritted my teeth again and refused to answer. He snarled viciously. Fu Lianjing, you've got some nerve cheating on me. I glared at him resentfully. Don't be so crude. How much did you ever really care about me? Look at how you've treated me. What do you even take me for? He grabbed my face. Fu Lianjing, take a good look at yourself. If it weren't for me, would you have ever married into the Qin family? If it weren't for me, you'd still be living in that drafty shack. A few days as a young mistress and you've forgotten your place. I kept my eyes tightly shut, not moving a muscle. He held me close and coaxed. Be good now. Don't make me angry. Alright, if I didn't care for you, why would I go through all this trouble? Everything we're doing is for our son's future. You'll keep him safe, won't you? I didn't dare provoke him further and could only yield. What if it's a daughter? It has to be a son, otherwise we'll have to start all over again, and next time he might not fall for it. I know full well how vicious he is. In our past life, he followed Qin Lingqiao's scheme to deceive me, showering me with the same tender affection and countless sweet nothings, yet in the end, he abandoned me without hesitation, even taking my life with his own hands. In his eyes, love and children are merely stepping stones to wealth and status. A scumbag like him doesn't deserve to have children. You don't deserve to live either. When are you making your move? Qin Lingqiao drinks himself into a stupor every day. downing painkillers by the bottle when his stomach acts up. How about poisoning him? He Lianhua looked at me and suddenly smiled. Liangjing, you're adorable. I think that's a brilliant idea. I'll get the poison for you. Why don't you be the one to administer it? My pupils contracted as I shook my head. No. He Lianhua said, / you have to do it, otherwise I'll be stuck with all the dirty work, and if you betray me, I'll be the one who takes the fall, / I was furious, / how could I possibly betray you? If they find out the child isn't Qin Lingchao's, I'll be the first to die, / He Lianhua kissed my cheek, / good, then do as I say. I love watching this. You're always complaining that I never go shopping, watch movies, or have meals with you, that I'm not romantic. But to me, plotting a murder with you, especially your own husband's murder, that's the ultimate romance, / I looked at him, at a loss for words, / you're seriously twisted, / he didn't even bother pretending, his handsome features lifted slightly at the corners. Thanks for the compliment. We didn't get up and head downstairs until it was almost dinner time. After forcing down the tasteless meal, he indeed brought me the medicine. This is the He family's secret formula. Give it to him when he starts coughing up blood, it'll finish him off in 10 minutes, clean and untraceable. He stayed at the Qin residence for a few days, spending every evening hanging around my place. He seemed particularly thrilled whenever Qin Lingchao was home. After he finally left, I went back home, caught 2 mice, and used just a bit of a secret potion. In less than a minute, they were both dead, but as my belly grew bigger, Qin Lingchao actually started to show a sense of responsibility. He was a legend in the business world, learning to manage a company in his teens, taking over as CEO at a young age, and gradually gaining full control. I'm the only one who knows how he's been drowning his pain in alcohol ever since Qin Luoluo left, escaping reality and turning from a business prodigy into a hollow shell of a man. Lately though, he suddenly stopped drinking. Sometimes he'll just stare absently at my belly, as if seeing a glimmer of redemption in this unexpected life growing inside me. Then he started making sweeping changes at the company, cutting large numbers of staff from the second and third branches, leaving nothing but discontent and grumbling in his wake. On the rare occasions I run into them at home, the way they look at me feels like hidden daggers. I became even more hesitant to go out, moving about the house with extra caution. On New Year's Day at the Qin family ancestral home, the entire clan gathered under one roof, with even the 3 aunts who lived away most of the year returning. The eldest aunt, Qin Mingzhu, now 50, had remained unmarried and childless her whole life. Despite her immense contributions to the Qin family business, she had never received a single share, only drawing an executive salary. After the evening banquet, the various branches of the family dispersed. I found Qin Mingzhu smoking alone in the garden. Seeing me standing in the cold wind with my pregnant belly, she stubbed out her cigarette and waved away the smoke. Frowning, she said, "What are you doing out in this freezing weather?" Her tone was curt, but I knew this was her way of showing concern. "Thank you, Auntie." We talked for a long time. When she walked me back to the main building, Qin Lingchao was waiting at the entrance. He accompanied me upstairs and suddenly asked in a low voice, "What did you say to her? I've never seen her so gentle before." "I suppose she just likes children," I said with a faint smile. "Do you know why Aunt never married?" Qin Lingchao fell silent for a moment. She was grandfather's eldest daughter, the first to join the company. Back then, she helped my father a great deal. "Was that car accident 16 years ago really just an accident?" I suddenly asked. He abruptly halted, his gaze turning sharp and cold. "Fu Liangjing, you do well to remember your place." His voice dropped to a whisper, yet each word cut like a blade. "Don't think that hearing a few idle rumors will let you uncover the Qin family's secrets. Keep talking, and you won't even know how you died." I stroked my swollen belly and sneered. "So this is your excuse for clinging to life in fear of death? You know your parents' deaths are suspicious, yet you don't even dare to investigate. And you're living in harmony with their murderer. How is that any different from acknowledging the thief as your father?" "Fu Liangjing," he roared in fury, his knuckles turning white as he clenched his fists. "No need to shout so loud. I can hear you just fine." I met his gaze directly. "Rest assured, I have zero interest in you or the Qin family's secrets. I just find it pathetic. What's the point of carrying a child for 9 months if they grow up knowing their parents were murdered but are too cowardly to seek revenge? Might as well have given birth to a pancake." Qin Lingchao trembled with rage, bloodshot eyes glaring viciously. "Don't think your pregnancy will stop me from dealing with you. Bullying a pregnant woman, is that all you've got, you coward?" I let out a scornful laugh and turned back to my room, sitting by the window, gazing at the festively decorated Qin manor. Silent tears streamed down. "Dad, Mom, I will avenge you, I swear it." After that night, Qin Lingzhao started drinking heavily again. In his drunken stupor, he would wander the halls clutching Qin Luolua's diary, calling out her name over and over until he disturbed grandfather Qin. The old man flew into a rage, but in his outburst I glimpsed an even uglier truth. The entire Qin family had known about Qin Lingzhao and Qin Luolua's affair all along. No wonder no one went looking for her when she ran away from home. They'd have been glad to see her die out there, if it meant sparing the Qin family's reputation. And Qin Luolua's true identity turned out to be even more twisted than I had imagined. 16 years ago, a fire in a shopping mall claimed the life of Qin Lingzhao's younger sister, Qin Shuang. On the same day, the eldest son of the Qin family and his wife died in a car accident. The Qin family's stock price plummeted. To quell public outrage, they suppressed the news of Qin Shuang's death, leaving her without even a grave or a legacy. They even brought in a girl from outside to take her place. That girl was Qin Luoluo. To the public, she wasn't presented as an adopted daughter but as their biological child. Was she really just picked up randomly? I asked He Lianhua. He sneered, "Of course not. The second son had a mistress, his white moonlight, but he sent her abroad to secure a marriage alliance. She ended up marrying a man with a hereditary heart condition who died young. Then she came back with the child and became his mistress again. Was the mall fire really an accident? Who knows?" He Lianhua flicked his lighter idly. The mall hadn't opened yet, and it was a holiday. Qin Lingzhao took Qin Shuang inside to play without permission. Only he made it out alive. He paused, giving me a meaningful look. The fire was too intense. They couldn't even recover the bones of 6-year-old Qin Shuang. Did Qin Lingzhao ever mention what happened back then? He Lianhua narrowed his eyes. "Why are you so interested in this? I just find the whole situation strange. The Qin family is like a man-eating monster. I'm afraid my child and I might suffer the same fate." He grabbed my chin, his voice turning cold. "Stop talking nonsense and don't go asking around anymore." After that fire, Qin Lingzhao developed PTSD and has completely blocked out those memories. Seeing a therapist did nothing for him. Only Qin Luoluo could calm him down. That's why they adopted her. Great uncle gave the order that no one was ever to mention it again. First, Qin Luoluo had a forbidden romance with him, and now, even in death, she's haunting him, leaving him a shadow of his former self. You have to admit, the second branch of the family knows exactly how to destroy a person. Qin Lingzhao, you're nothing but a complete and utter fool, a good-for-nothing. As my pregnancy progressed, the undercurrents in the Qin family's ancestral home grew increasingly turbulent. One evening while I was strolling in the garden, the pavilion's beam suddenly snapped and collapsed with a thunderous crash. In my panic, my water broke. Through the excruciating pain, I saw Qin Mingzhu, who happened to be back at the old house to retrieve something, and she rushed me to the hospital just in time. Mother and baby are both doing well. Overjoyed, grandfather Qin immediately gifted the newborn great-grandson 5% of the Qin family shares and named him Qin Zhan. On the eve of the full moon celebration, He Lianhua finally found an opportunity to sneak into the nursery. He carefully picked up the child, but the moment he clearly saw the baby's eyes, his face abruptly changed. Those were the Qin family's signature almond-shaped eyes, identical to Qin Lingzhao's. I've been trying to stop him for a month because of this. I even considered using double eyelid tape on him, but dropped the idea for fear of causing harm. What are you angry about? Suspecting he's Qin Lingzhao's son? Are you out of your mind? You know exactly what happened that day. Then can you explain why he has these narrow eyes? You're the one with small eyes. Your whole family has small eyes. Can't you tell I've had plastic surgery? For God's sake. Only then did his anger subside as he stared at my face. Really? I closed my eyes. He practically pressed his face against mine to examine it, finally spotting a faint surgical scar. I then showed him my past plastic surgery records. You scared me to death. Get lost. I snapped at him irritably. He gave me a loud kiss, then scooped up Qin Yan with a cheeky grin. Oh, daddy's good boy. Your eyes aren't small at all. They're big and bright, just like your old man's. And this big forehead here shows how clever you are. I rolled my eyes. If you can't say something nice, then shut up. You'll be happy when he ends up with a receding hairline. Lianhua smacked her own lips. That was nonsense. My son is the most handsome guy in the entire universe. Little ones need plenty of sleep. He only opened his eyes for a moment before dozing off again. Lianhua gazed at him with such tender affection, her heart practically melting. Don't you dare pass on that scumbag energy to my son. Once the baby was asleep, I pulled him out of the nursery. When do we make our move? So soon? He raised an eyebrow. at least wait until the full moon banquet is over, otherwise, people will say our son brings bad luck. The richer they are, the more superstitious they get. On the day of the full moon banquet, the elite of Jiangqing gathered. Holding Qin Yan, I stood beside Grandpa Qin. Receiving congratulations, whether genuine or feigned, everyone was beaming with joy, except for Qin Lingzhao, who stood out like a sore thumb, dressed in a bespoke black suit. His sculpturally handsome face showed not a hint of cheer. His wine glass now empty, he stood by the window, gazing vacantly into the void. Romani was genuinely happy for me and even pulled me aside to whisper, "What's wrong with Qin Lingzhao? Glowering on such a joyous occasion, what a buzzkill." But judging by his half-dead demeanor, you might be widowed soon. When that happens, I'll take you to pick out male models. Ever since the drugging incident, she's become Qin Lingchao's #1 anti-fan, single-handedly demoting him from industry heartthrob to certified lunatic. And frankly, he's got issues all this time. He's only visited the child once. One time I overheard him sobbing drunkenly in his study, clutching Qin Luolua's diary to his chest and murmuring, "If only it were our child." His devotion to Qin Luoluo runs deeper than the ocean, I have to admit that much, but if he misses her that much, why doesn't he just follow her in death? Probably too exhausted from work, I said, still putting up a front to protect his image. Another heartbroken soul at the scene was Su Yang. He glanced at Qin Han, and with just that one look, his eyes welled up. He's adorable. Qin Yan is quite the little tyrant, even with several nannies around at night. He insists on sleeping with me. He's also incredibly proud, won't even give the old master face, but when he saw Su Yang, he actually reached out his tiny hand on his own. Su Yang, pleasantly surprised, extended his hand for the little one to hold. The baby flashed a toothless grin, noticing someone looking over. I quickly had the nanny carry him away. Su Yang's eyes dimmed, his expression sorrowful. Shortly after the new year, Jiangqing was blanketed by the heaviest snowfall in a decade. Qin Luoluo loved snowy days the most, while Qin Lingchao set off fireworks in the garden. The explosion startled Qin Han awake, and the infant's cries echoed through the old mansion. Old Master Qin couldn't stand watching him pine desperately for Qin Luoluo. After barking "Get out," the young man retreated to his downtown apartment. It happened to be the weekend, and his assistant was off duty when he failed to show up on Monday. They checked his apartment only to find he'd been dead for 2 days. Excessive alcohol consumption led to fatal airway obstruction by vomit. Rather than using outright poison, he lianhua, and I opted for a more subtle approach. He placed a specially prepared whiskey, a 55% single malt laced with precisely measured emetic, in the most prominent spot of the liquor cabinet. The dosage was calibrated to induce violent vomiting before unconsciousness, yet subtle enough to avoid immediate suspicion. The shock of the news gave Grandpa Qin an immediate stroke. "Dad, there's something fishy about a KOS death." Second Uncle Qin Zhang's eyes were bloodshot. He was murdered. He Lianhua had already swapped out the liquor at the scene that day. Even the doctors called it an accident. It was practically foolproof. Yet Qin Zhang's suspicions weren't directed at him, but at me. "Uncle," I said with an incredulous look, "have you lost your mind? What possible reason would I have to kill him?" Qin Jiang tossed a stack of photos onto the table, shots of Su Yang and me breaking up at a cafe, captured with a strangely artistic vibe. "What does this prove?" I chuckled lightly. "We're classmates who happened to meet at the grad school prep course. Is sharing coffee suddenly a crime?" Aunt Qin Mingzhu cut in coldly. "Second brother. Without concrete evidence, these accusations will offend the Su family." After joining the Qin family, I learned that while the Su family's business scale couldn't match the Qin's, they had deep-rooted connections in the capital that even the Qins dared not cross. Qin Jiang sneered and pointed at Qin Yan in the stroller. "He's the proof. I checked your prenatal records. They're all forged." I turned to Grandpa Qin in the hospital bed and said plaintively, "Grandpa told me to do it." Under Qin Zhang's stunned gaze, the old man slowly nodded. Qin Mingzhu added, "After Liang Jing moved into the old residence, he experienced multiple accidents, forcing us to conceal the truth. As for the reason," she scanned the room, "some people here know exactly why." Qin Jiang, fuming and panting heavily, continued, "I have more evidence. I intended to collect Achao's hair for a DNA test with his father, but I couldn't find a single sample of Achao anywhere. His body was cremated without our knowledge. Both the family home and his apartment were thoroughly cleaned, his personal belongings disposed of, and even the DNA sample stored in the hospital's vault has vanished. It's completely unreasonable that Qin Lingchao's body was cremated before his funeral even took place." I shook my head repeatedly. "Grandfather, I didn't do it. Some people will stop at nothing to eliminate me and my child." Hearing all this, What appears flawless is actually the biggest flaw. I've been home every day lately taking care of the child, never even stepping outside. How could I possibly have done any of this? This is clearly a case of the thief crying stop thief, a deliberate frame-up. Grandpa Chin stared at me with an icy gaze, tears streamed down my face. You don't believe me, Grandpa? Fine, then let's do a DNA test. Akao's DNA samples were all destroyed, but you're his grandfather and his uncle. You share blood ties with Aten too. If we can prove your biological relationship, doesn't that confirm his connection to Akao? Qin Mingzhu retorted, that won't work. What if you really did cheat, and the person you cheated with was one of our male cousins? They'd share the same bloodline too, I declared resolutely. Then test them all. Gather every uncle and male cousin in the family and compare their DNA with Aten's. Let's see if any matches father and son. Qin Mingzhu hesitated, but if word gets out, it would sound so bad, I said. Just say that Grandpa is drawing up his will, and everyone in the family will get a share. Grandpa, what do you think? Grandpa Qin glanced at Qin Yen, then nodded anyway. Qin Jiang, on the other hand, backed off because I seemed too confident, and Qin Yen looked so much like Qin Lingchao, I didn't give him a chance to back out, seizing the moment to say, but if we can prove the relationship between Akao and Aten, what do you have to say about second uncle's false accusations against us today? This was the first time I confronted the second branch head-on, and I refused to yield an inch. Grandpa Qin signaled Qin Mingzhu with a look. She pulled out a piece of paper from under his pillow, covered in handwriting that looked like squirming earthworms. It was the will. It stated that 35% of the conglomerate shares under his name would be entirely transferred to Aishan. Aishan already held 5% of the shares himself, and with Qin Lingchao retaining 15%, combined, Aishan would possess the largest stake in the conglomerate. Dad, Qin Jiang nearly fainted. Grandpa Qin, however, closed his eyes and refused to look at him. He's not senile yet. While the law may grant inheritance rights to illegitimate children, it goes against our social norms, especially for major corporations under public scrutiny. If he actually goes through with this, it could spark public outrage and tank the stock price, Qin Mingzhu declared. Everyone heard that. We'll proceed as Liang Jing suggested. The hospital happens to have a gene sequencer. We'll have results in 2 hours at the earliest. All members of the Qin family provided samples. With so many eyes watching, there's absolutely no chance of tampering, as the genetic testing was in full swing. He Lianhua was so anxious that sweat beaded on his forehead, under the guise of delivering milk tea. I slipped a laminated photo into his cup. After seeing it, his pupils dilated in shock. Any member of the Qin family would recognize my identity at a glance, because I am Qin Shuang, the one who supposedly perished in the flames 16 years ago. I am Qin Lingchao's own sister, the true heiress of the Qin Corporation. That fire was no accident. Qin Lingchao was the one who brought me there. When I realized the place was on fire, I tried to climb out of the ball pit, but I was too short. I screamed for help, but even though my brother was right there above me, he never showed himself. What he didn't know was that there was still one other person inside that unopened mall. It was Fu Yao. He originally intended to steal, but stumbled upon 2 children from wealthy families. Seizing the chaos, he kidnapped me to extort money, yet the Qin family suppressed all news about me, knowing my parents' deaths and my own peril in the fire were no coincidence. I deceived him into believing I was just the housekeeper's child, worthless, but capable of getting him money. As a child, I loved burying treasures. Just days before, I had hidden a small pink diamond worth millions in the corner of the villa garden. I told Fu Yao to dig it up, and he sold it for 500,000. Coincidentally, Fu Yao had no children. Seeing how clever and quick-witted I was, he adopted me. At my request, he bought the small studio I now live in, finally giving me a place to call home. In our past life, Qin Luoluo immediately recognized my identity and deliberately tormented me, stabbing me in the back. Honestly, she was going overboard. Although Qin Lingchao and I are biological siblings, he was raised by our grandfather while I grew up with our parents. We only saw each other a few times a year during holidays, so there was no real bond between us. That's why he didn't hesitate to attack me when he was just 10 years old. And when he found out I survived, he simply tried to finish the job. Whether the diary exists or not makes no difference. It wasn't until I was on my deathbed that I finally understood. So after being reborn, the first thing I did was get plastic surgery. I'm Qin Shuang. The DNA results show that Aishan shares a 5%, 1/8 blood relation with Grandpa Qin and all the uncles. While it doesn't directly prove a father-son relationship with Qin Lingchao, it doesn't rule it out either. However, None of the samples provided today show a paternal blood connection to him, unless the Qin family has another son out there somewhere, who just happens to be the person I had an affair with. The test results aren't entirely conclusive. Whether to believe them or not is entirely up to grandfather. I carried Ashen over and held him right before grandfather's eyes. Grandfather gazed for a long time, his eyes gradually growing moist, while Ashen only has similar eyes to Qin Lingchao. He looks exactly like my late father did as a child, truly the spitting image, he declared with finality. Ashen is my great-grandson. If your eyesight is failing, second son, get it treated, don't ignore the problem, and certainly don't lie through your teeth. What happened today is never to be mentioned again. The irony was, the subsequent tests revealed that both the second and third branches had children with no biological ties to the Qin family, one of whom happened to be Qin Zhang's favorite grandson. The old man nearly choked with rage. My aunt and I exchanged glances, both suppressing the mockery in our eyes. In this world, the only true way to ensure the purity of a family's bloodline is through the children born to daughters, not sons or grandsons. Why can't they understand that? I confronted Qin Jiang. Does this prove my innocence now? His face turned red with frustration, completely baffled by how things had turned out. Grandfather Qin instructed the lawyer to execute the will exactly as he had written it, without any changes. When all was said and done, Qin Yan and I emerged as the final victors. Everyone returned to the old family residence together to prepare for Qin Lingchao's funeral. The door clicked shut softly behind me, before I could even reach for the light switch. A familiar force abruptly pulled me into an embrace. He Lianhua's arms tightened around me like iron bands, his heated breath washing over my ear as he whispered, I never imagined you were actually Qin Shuang. My body went rigid in his embrace for a split second before melting into his arms. Yes, he finally understood why I loathed Qin Lingchao. When the fire broke out, I was trapped in that plastic ball pit. Balloons were exploding everywhere like bombs, one after another. He stood right there above me, close enough to pull me to safety, but he didn't. I screamed, brother, save me, until my throat was raw, but the empty mall only echoed my cries. In that moment, I swore if I survived, I'd make him experience every second of the despair I felt. The second branch of the family manipulated him, didn't they? They wanted to seize all the shares our parents left behind. And my parents' death, that was their doing too, right? I lifted my face and met Lianhua's gaze directly. His eyes flickered, and his Adam's apple bobbed slightly. Yes, it was them, but I knew that was only part of the truth. Back then, my parents were surrounded by wolves. It wasn't just the second branch of the family who struck. There was also grandfather turning a blind eye, relatives watching coldly from the sidelines, and many others like the Helian family, circling like vultures, waiting for their chance. I want you to kill them. My voice was as soft as a feather, yet carried an unyielding resolve. After all these years, there's no evidence to be found, and grandfather would never let me go to the police. In his mind, the truth doesn't matter. His children and grandchildren don't matter. Only the stock price does. If I want revenge, I'll have to rely on myself. Lianhua's brow furrowed almost imperceptibly. I knew that expression all too well. He was weighing the pros and cons, calculating the gains and losses. You're not willing. I took half a step back, creating distance. You've seen how they treat Asian. We got lucky this time because they couldn't find Qin Lingchao's DNA sample, but that doesn't mean they never will. Do you think having a will makes everything foolproof? As long as grandfather is alive, he can change the will anytime. If Asian is gone, the will becomes meaningless. Are you really willing to gamble with that? Lianhua's pupils contracted for a moment before returning to normal. He abruptly pulled me back into his embrace, burying his nose in the crook of my neck and taking a deep breath. Fine, since they're all here today, I'll make my move now. Don't be reckless. Are you sure about this? Don't you need to prepare in advance? Lianhua sneered. Darling, you read my mind. I never intended to keep them around anyway. I kissed him first for the very first time. I trust you more than anyone. He held me so tight, as if trying to fuse me into his very bones, staring at our intimately entwined shadows on the wall. All I could see was a monster. In the dead of night, chaotic screams erupted from outside. I opened my eyes fearfully, and Lianhua patted my back. Don't be afraid, I nudged him. Hurry back to your own room before someone sees you. He was strikingly handsome, leisurely buttoning his shirt with broad shoulders, a narrow waist, and a solid chest. The moonlight cast a silver outline around him, beautiful as an illusion, masking the complexity in my eyes. I poured him a cup of tea and raised it with both hands. May you achieve immediate victory and swift success. His gaze softened as he looked at me, tilting his head back to finish the drink in one go. When he leaned in to kiss me, I turned away, so his lips gently brushed against my hair instead. I whispered softly, Fu Liangjing, I love you. I smiled faintly and gave him a gentle push. You should go. In my past life, I loved him with every fiber of my being and saw him as my only salvation, yet he was the one who ended up taking my life. In this life, I've returned everything he ever gave me. After washing the cup he'd used and placing it back in the cupboard, I threw on my coat and hurried downstairs. Chaos had erupted downstairs. I ran into Qin Mingzhu, whose tear-filled eyes held complex emotions as she said, someone poisoned them. The second brother's entire family is dead. I covered my mouth and let out a perfectly timed gasp, then call the police, quick. Just then, a scream from the nanny echoed from upstairs. I rushed upstairs with the crowd and saw Helianhua lying on his back on the bed, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth, his eyes wide open with a childlike confusion, yet a faint, elusive smile lingered on his lips. I had looked at him the same way back then. Unable to comprehend why someone who professed to love me could treat me with such cruelty, now our positions are reversed. Standing by the bed, I suddenly realized my tears were falling thick and fast onto his face, and I was clumsily wiping the bloodstains from his cheeks. Midway through, it dawned on me that this was wrong. I should have felt triumphant, just like when I watched Xia Yiran and Qin Lingchao die. So why does my heart feel hollowed out? Memories flooded back unbidden. In my darkest hour of the previous life, he entered my world like a beacon of light, giving me the courage and hope to go on. He was the one who taught me how to face slander and malice, transforming me completely. He provided a temporary sanctuary, granting me the 2 happiest years of my existence, and that fleeting glimmer in his eyes the day he killed me. Perhaps it was just a reflection from the water, or merely my own desperate delusion. How could a man who murdered his own wife and child with his own hands possibly shed tears? It must have been my mind playing tricks, fabricating excuses for him. So in the end, all that remains etched in my mind is the scene of him pushing me into the water with his own hands, and the movement of his Adam's apple as he tilted his head back to drink the poisoned tea. All the events of the past have faded away like flowing water. Love and hate, right and wrong, it's all over now. After the investigation, it was discovered that the murderer was actually the nanny who had worked in the household for over 20 years. She also took poison and left a suicide note, revealing that her daughter had been assaulted by the second uncle and later took her own life, lying low for years, biding my time for revenge. As for He Lianhua, the perfect crime he meticulously orchestrated was truly flawless. The police had no choice but to rule it as manslaughter. Especially since the drug was identical to the nanny's. Upon learning that the entire second branch had been wiped out, grandfather passed away suddenly. I sold Asian's shares to the third and fourth branches for 50 billion. I gave Qin Mingzhu another hefty sum as a token of gratitude. He Lianhua thought he was my biggest ally in the Qin family, but he had no idea that after successfully getting close to Qin Lingchao, I had already connected with my aunt and formed a partnership. She had long known about my identity and Aitan's origins. As a high-ranking executive at Qin Hospital, she easily tampered with the prenatal checkup and DNA reports, deceiving everyone. People in our circle all said I was short-sighted for taking the money and walking away, but I knew that in just 2 years, the real estate market would crash spectacularly, the Qin group would collapse, and all its shareholders would be drowning in debt, so many that the rooftops wouldn't be able to hold them all. This is your last chance to get off. As for whether I can hold on to such a vast fortune, ahead, the plane trees blaze like fire. Su Yang was holding Ain Yen, happily teaching him to speak. Dad, and